This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Yarborough. I am your town clerk / tax collector, and I welcome you to this year's public hearing for our tentative budget, fiscal year 25-26. We are here for the town budget public hearing, which is for the 2024 grand list. Again, it's for the 25-26 fiscal year, pursuant to Section 705 of the Town Charter, and as well Connecticut General Statutes Section 7-344. Before I start into the presentation for this evening, I would like just to throw out a friendly reminder. Everybody, please be nice to each other. That's all I ask. You don't want to see me get grumpy. So, I'd like to give you a quick little history of a budget because I think it's always helpful for everyone to know the process. Every November / December, budgets are being made in each department. We're required to turn them in on a certain date. Then, after the new year, workshops begin with each department head bringing their budgets and defending them before the Board of Finance. After every workshop is completed, a preliminary budget is created by the Board of Finance. And then we have an idea as we're moving forward in the process of the three very important parts of the budget. Number one being the grand levy, number two being the grand list, and of course, the mill rate. For tonight, we're going to have the presentations of the two different budgets before us. First, we'll have the Board of Education, and then we'll have the town government budget. Please be reminded there is no voting tonight. This is only a public hearing. The town's annual budget town meeting will take place next month on Monday, May 12th, 2025. Well, there will be a little bit of voting just on procedural aspects of the budget, and then it will be referred to a vote on to vote at referenda. The referenda is taking place on May 20th, all day long, 6 to 8 p.m. For a referenda, we only have the one poll, and that's at Mildred Wakely Recreation Center on 7 Lindsley Street. And when you go to referenda to vote for the budget, it's fairly easy. You will see yes or no as to whether you want the budget to pass or if not. Again, the way we'll proceed is that each budget will be presented. We take turns each year, and this year it's the Board of Education that will go first. Our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Patrick Stirk, will come up. He will present the Board of Education's budget. Normally, then what we do is that we move forward and have Mr. Frieda come up and present the town government, the budget for the town government. After the two presentations, we then open it up to public comment. I know there are going to be times where there's going to be questions asked particular to the budget and in particular to the person who's up front, but the normal proceeding would be we'd wait for both presentations. It's not a hard and fast rule, but we kind of try to keep things, organized. Please remember, when you come up to this microphone up here, you need to tell us your name, you need to give us your address, and then just make sure that everyone can hear you before you start really moving on in your comments or questions. Keep in mind that each person, if anyone in here who wants to speak will have a chance to speak. Your first go around, we ask you to limit it between 5 to 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes the first go. Let's have a chance for everyone to speak, and then if you'd like to come up again, you are more than welcome. Everyone gets a chance to speak one time, and then we'll go around again. All right, wonderful. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to introduce you to our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Patrick Stirk. One moment, please, I'm sorry. You're going to go first? Our first selectman, Mr. Michael Frieda.
Well, thank you very much, Stacy, and I'm happy to see such a very good turnout tonight. Stacy is right. Patrick will be presenting first on the Board of Education side, and then I'll be presenting the town. But I thought this year it would be very important for me to provide some information to each and every one of you as to why this is probably the most difficult budget in recent memory. I'm going to start by sharing with you some information. What is the main reason why this budget has been so difficult to figure out? And it has been very difficult, ladies and gentlemen, to try to figure out. The reason is revaluation. This is the main reason why. Because unlike in previous revaluations, property values have risen and skyrocketed to an unprecedented level, an increase of 37.5%. It's not just us. The other mayors who I'm very friendly with have the same issue. Wallingford in this general area, Wallingford, Hamden, West Haven. I spoke with the mayor of East Haven recently. He's got some big issues in terms of how do we control tax increases. Before I take you through this, one of the many reasons why this has been a 37.5% increase in North Haven is that inventory is low, demand is high. That's one of the main reasons. Another main reason is, and I'll give you an example, Shawmut Avenue. There was a house that went up for $345,000. There was a bidding war in the street, Shawmut Avenue. It sold for, I think, $399,500. Wherever a house goes up in North Haven, for some reason, there are these bidding wars. When I say a bidding war, I mean people bidding for more than the asking price. So if you have a street that you live on, and there's a house, let's say 3 houses away from you, that goes up and it gets more than the asking price, it elevates the value on the whole street. It's called comparative sales. And there's a housing crisis also throughout the state of Connecticut, which contributes to low supply and high demand. So what does that all mean for the town of North Haven? Well, as a result, residential homes now represent 56.5% of the tax burden. If we look at the previous year, as you see here, last year it was 52.4%. So the burden has shifted, not just here in North Haven, but to other cities and towns, more towards a residential burden. All of us who have homes here in North Haven. You see the commercial swing, negligible. You see the industrial swing, less than 1%. The personal property has actually declined, and motor vehicles have actually declined. So we see this shifting burden to us as homeowners as to what's happening in terms of revaluations, appraised values, assessed values, property tax increases. Revaluation. I didn't understand this before I took office, ladies and gentlemen, so I know that I can't expect everyone to understand the definition of revaluation. This is the technical definition. Why do we have to do it? A lot of residents say, hey, Mr. Frieda, hey, Mike, can't you stop it? No, we can't stop it. Connecticut law requires towns to revalue property a minimum of every 5 years and conduct a physical inspection of both the interior and exterior of each property every 10 years. Now, this year, there was no internal inspection requirement. 5 years from now, there will be. So what is it? What is the definition of revaluation? The technical version. The process of conducting data collection and market analysis necessary to equalize the values, determine fair market value of all the properties within a municipality for the purpose of a fair distribution of tax burden. Kind of ambiguous, right? Can't expect the average citizen to understand that, but that's the technical definition. And this is why we're in this state right now, the state of where we are, the state of being. Property values change over time. This is part of the technical definition. Some types of property have appreciated or depreciated at different annual rates. The last reval here in North Haven was in 2019, because property values have changed since that time. Inequities may have emerged. A revaluation, the technical definition, is it equalizes the inequities that the market has caused since the last revaluation. Now, that's sort of very technical language. In layman's terms, what happens is that every 5 years, things happen in homeowners' homes. They may put a new central air conditioning in. There may be a new roof, perhaps vinyl siding, a new furnace. So when that happens after the last reval, that all gets captured in the new assessment and appraisal value for the homes that have added things, put new infrastructure in. Like I mentioned, the central air condition as an example. Appraised value. This is the value that estimates a property's general worth. The assessed value, it's 70% of the property's appraised value. So we as citizens, we get taxed not on the appraised value, but on the assessed value. But as appraisals have skyrocketed, 37.5%, the assessed values have also risen. Your property tax, as mentioned, our property tax is on the assessed value. So let's take a look here. This is something that I wanted to drill down versus just saying, here's the value of the average home in North Haven. We took this by style of homes. So let's take a look at a bungalow. Quite frankly, I didn't even know what a bungalow was until I put this together with Valerie in my office. So the average new total on the assessed value is $268,914. The average prior was $106,152. So you see the averages by home. A Cape went from $258 to $350. These are the appraised values, though. I may have mentioned assessed. These are the appraised values. A ranch went from $268 to $368. There's a lot of split levels in North Haven. They went from $288,536 to $394. A raised ranch went, believe it or not, from $304 to $416. And that raised ranch went up 36.8%. A salt box, you see, a Dutch colonial went up 35%. Believe it or not, there are log homes in North Haven. That went up 41.7%. A conventional went up 32.2%. You see the contemporary? There's a lot of colonials in North Haven. The average colonial went from $395, $496 to $550, $480. Almost 42%. A Tudor went up 22.6%. And believe it or not, there are some mansions in North Haven. That's the average price. The average prior total you see there, and then you see the new total, 20.4%. So that's an overview by style of home, the average price per style of home. Now let's take a look at what this means in tax dollars. What does it mean to us as citizens on these 11 style of homes? Let's take a Cape. The mill rate currently is 34.64 in North Haven. We're going to be proposing tonight a reduction down to 29.46. So the average Cape, the taxes at the current mill rate are $6,269. They'll be going up $1,171, believe it or not, because of these skyrocketing values. That's a Cape. Ranch. The average ranch, you see the assessed value in the previous year. You see what it's gone up to. Even if we drop the mill rate, we're looking at a $1,088 tax increase for the average ranch. That's going from 34.64 to 29.46. A split level. The appraisal went up 36.7. So even dropping the mill rate, you see the appraised value, the assessed value, 1 year to the next, and that's a $1,136 tax increase. A colonial. The average colonial will go up $1,763, even dropping the mill rate, I think it's 5.18%. We'll get into that in a little while. A contemporary seems to have the least impact on a tax increase per a contemporary home, $609. A raised ranch, again, based on what the mill rate is currently, what the proposed mill rate will be that we're proposing, and that is $1,204. A Tudor, actually a little bit lower, $588. In a conventional year, that's still fairly significant, but in this year, with the property values going up, we see staggering increases. A bungalow, $790,000. A conventional, $1,532. And I just want to repeat it again, so in case the message was missed for those listening, or those watching on TV or Facebook. We're streaming live. Our mill rate is 34.64. At the new appraisals and new assessments, even dropping to a 29.46 mill rate, it's $1,532. A Dutch colonial, $1,122. A salt box, $819. Following this reval, the average home value among all of the 11 styles that I've just illustrated will be $449,889 in North Haven, with the average assessment of $314. For years, I've stood up here and I've said the average home in North Haven is about $300,000, and the average assessed value is $210,000. You see the comparison? That's the average home that is a byproduct of the average of those 11 styles. So if you are trying to determine what your individual taxes would be, this is the formula. You multiply your new assessment, not the appraisal. 70% is the assessment. And you take that by the proposed mill rate, which will be tonight 29.46, and then divide by 1,000. And if you need help on this, you call my office and we will review this with you. So, the average house appraised value in North Haven among all the styles is $444,889, with an assessed value of $314,922. Times the proposed mill rate, divided by 1,000, the average taxes on the average appraised value, the average assessed, is $9,278. Now, there's just a little good news, and that is motor vehicle taxes. With a depreciation on the value of motor vehicles, combined with a decrease in the mill rate, the 29.46, motor vehicle taxes will be decreasing. And what we did here was, I'm showing you 10 different cars by style, by year, by make, and we see here that when we look at 2023, the mill rate at 32.46, those are the current taxes, right in the middle of this graph, ladies and gentlemen, right in the middle of this chart. Now, by bringing the mill rate down to 29.46, and with the values dropping versus the way they were during COVID, this is kind of the average decrease in car taxes by style. So there's a little bit of good news there. So if you're driving a 2021 Chevy Tahoe, your car tax will go down $559. So before I present, as Stacy mentioned, before I present the town side of the budget, we're going to turn it over to our superintendent of schools, Patrick Stirk, who will profile the Board of Education. Thank you for your attention to the preview before we get into the actual budgets.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Stirk. I'm Superintendent of Schools, and I'll be presenting the Board of Education's 2025-2026 budget. So there's little change to the overall budget at all levels and within all departments. The far majority of increases are a result of contractual obligations, the district's new transportation contract, and tuition for out-of-district special education schools, Within this year's budget proposal, we plan to hire 2 positions to support our students who receive special education services. So the proposed budget provides the following: resources to educate 3,134 students, mental health, nutrition, and medical care to allow students to access instruction, specialized services required for all students to meet their potential, diverse opportunities for students to engage in activities outside of their curricular pursuits, and safe and reliable transportation to and from school. Each year, we work diligently to provide and develop, as well as enhance, the programs within the district so that we can educate North Haven students in North Haven. There are times when out-of-district programs are more appropriate for our students, but we believe it is our duty to make every effort to provide for them within their community. Educating students in North Haven is not only best for students and their families, but is also fiscally responsible for the district and town, as the cost of out-of-district programs and transportation can range anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 per student. North Haven Public Schools continues to excel in academic areas and is providing numerous opportunities and activities to support the whole student. This portion of the presentation will highlight a few of those achievements, as well as how we are measuring the return on the Board of Education's and the community's investment. The District Reference Group, or DIRG, is a method in which Connecticut groups similar school districts. The grouping takes into account annual household income, students who receive free and reduced lunch, as well as other factors. This grouping, or DIRG, allows people to compare multiple areas of similar districts, such as performance, expenditures, staffing, etc. So the average per pupil expenditure for DIRG D is $21,347. North Haven's per pupil expenditure is $19,266. North Haven spends $2,080 less per student per year than this average. The budget would need to increase another 10% to meet the DIRG D average of per pupil expenditure. And for comparison purposes, North Haven is $1,500 away from the lowest spending district and $7,400 away from the top spending district. This chart shows the highest and lowest spending districts within our DIRG. North Haven ranks 18 of 24 districts, and this is a drop of 3 places compared to last year, and a total of 7 spots over the past 2 years. Now, at present, I do not believe these drops are impacting the education we're providing our students. However, it is worrisome. The district achievements reflect a substantial return on investment based on the district's funding comparisons. Last school year, North Haven ranked 5th in the Smarter Balanced Assessment for English Language Arts and 6th in the area of math. North Haven's 5th graders ranked 5th in our DIRG on the Next Generation Science Standards Assessment. We're spending below the average in many areas and achieving above average results within our DIRG. Our goal is to maintain this success and continue to build upon it. When breaking down the data a little bit more, we see that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students are performing at the top of the district reference group. Each grade is performing 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of 24 districts, with North Haven's 3rd graders ranked number 1 based on their performance on the ELA portion of the Smarter Balanced Assessment. Annually, the Connecticut State Department of Education releases accountability reports for each district and each of their schools. Within these reports, they identify schools of distinction. Now, these schools are identified based on certain scores and growth. This past year, Ridge Road Elementary, Montewiese Elementary, and Green Acres Elementary were each recognized as schools of distinction. This school year, the district was able to provide the following to our students. A full-day 4-year-old pre-K program was piloted at Green Acres. This pilot has been very well received by our families, and we plan to continue this expansion in the future. The RISE program transitioned from Ridge Road to Clintonville at the start of this school year. The program was in need of additional space, which also included a large sensory room. In October, the Board of Education approved the adoption of a therapy dog program at the middle and high schools. The program has been receiving great reviews, and we plan to expand that as well. And in a joint effort with the town, DeMayo and Brozac Fields have been significantly renovated. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Phil. As I stated earlier in the presentation, North Haven Public Schools' goal is to educate all students within our schools and provide unique and impactful programs that meet the full range of the needs of our students. One example of these district programs is the Clintonville RISE. This program costs the district approximately $2.25 million each year in staffing. If each of those students were placed in an out-of-district special education school, the cost to the district would be approximately $6.5 million. This figure also includes the transportation to and from those schools. The RISE program at Clintonville is currently saving the district an estimated $4.25 million annually. The following slides reflect the Board of Education's budget for the 25-26 school year. The requested increase for this upcoming school year is $4,473,130, which brings the annual Board of Education budget to $68,495,858. This represents a 6.99% increase from last year's improved budget. This increase will meet our contractual obligations and increases in special education tuition. It also covers the 2 new positions needed to effectively program and educate our students identified as needing special education services. It also allows us to keep them in this school district. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, programming for students in the district is a significant cost savings, even when including the additional positions presented in this budget. The Board of Education and myself recognize that a 6.99% request is significant and impactful to the citizens of North Haven. This slide was included to demonstrate that over 7%, or $4.6 million, of the initial ask has already been reduced through the superintendent's request and then reduced again by the Board of Education. These reductions included proposed positions, programs, supports, materials, and insurance reserves, all of which will be highlighted later in this presentation. So during the initial budget build process, we asked principals and department heads to present their requests to compile our initial budget build. This is done to get a full sense of both the needs and the wants as we continue to work to provide an outstanding education for the students and families of North Haven. At this stage, this initial budget build is then analyzed at the superintendent level. Reductions and adjustments are made in an effort to reduce the budget prior to submitting to the Board of Education. At the superintendent level, the following reductions were made. 11 identified capital projects were pushed to the 26-27 school year. New equipment and IT-related requests were reduced. New position requests were eliminated, which was the building sub at the middle school, as well as a middle school co-ed wrestling coach. We reduced 2 Type 1 buses from the projected transportation budget. Type 1 buses are your big, normal-sized buses. The district will now retain responsibility for bus monitors, so that is a savings of $403,000. The reduction of HVAC assessments from 4 schools to 2 schools. The application of excess costs, which was originally projected at 65%, as well as a $20,000 salary line correction. Following the submission of the superintendent's budget to the Board of Education, the BOE conducted a series of 3 workshops throughout the month of January. They heard presentations from building administrators as well as department heads regarding their requests. The board diligently questioned and explored requests and then further worked to make determinations on what to reduce and what to adjust. The board took very great care in making these reductions. They pored over each line to ensure that these reductions were the least impactful to the education of students. For this budget, the Board of Education was faced with, in my opinion, a very unfair amount of difficult decisions in an effort to continue to reduce the budget. And at that time, the board made reductions in the following areas. The medical and dental and workers' compensation self-funded insurance line was more or less eliminated. Instructional supplies, that line was reduced. Professional development, we are only down to the contractual amount. Requested high school science books and equipment will be purchased the following year in 26-27. IT and instructional subscriptions were reduced, and a reduction of the excess cost based upon information from the state. New positions were eliminated, a special education programs coordinator, as well as an occupational therapist. Library books and athletic equipment lines were reduced. As I mentioned before, in the superintendent level, there were 4 schools that were going to go through the HVAC assessment. That was reduced to 2, and then through the Board of Education, that was reduced to 0. Bookworms materials, part of our curriculum. Curriculum writing reductions, and final adjustments to all account lines. Following all of these cuts and reductions, the Board of Education's 6.99% increase is being driven by 5 areas. Increases to out-of-district special education tuition and transportation costs. Increases to legally mandated services for in-district special education needs that must be outsourced to contracted support services. Increases to student transportation costs, increases to electricity, and a request for 2 positions to support in-district special education services. I'll be highlighting those 2 positions later in this presentation. Special education tuition. This increase is a result of students who have moved to North Haven, and were placed in an out-of-district special education school by their prior school district. These increases are having a clear impact on our current year and need to be accounted for when preparing for next budget year. Professional and technical services. This area accounts for legally mandated services that the district must contract out for to provide services for in-district special education students. While this is an increase, the district has been collaborating with our support staff union to create the position of registered behavior technician, which is called an RBT, and using grant funding to train 10 of our own current paraprofessionals to become RBTs, registered behavior technicians. Therefore, lowering the need for these outside contracted services by approximately $550,000. At the conclusion of this current school year, the district contract with our current transportation vendor comes to an end. As such, the Board of Education went out to RFP and awarded the new transportation contract to DACO. During the contract negotiations, the Board of Education reluctantly made the decision to continue to keep responsibility of hiring bus monitors, hiring and employing bus monitors within the district. So at this time, instead of outsourcing this to the new transportation company, it will continue to be housed within the district at a savings of $403,000. Electricity rates have increased substantially, driven primarily by increases in delivery fees from United Illuminating. Medical and dental insurance. So the current projection by the district's insurance brokers, Brown & Brown, for the 25-26 school year for the employer contributions towards claims for both medical and dental is $9,186,430. This is a difference of about $1.4 million from present funding. In an effort to minimize the overall budgetary increase, the Board of Education determined that the district will remain at the current level of funding in this area and continue to rely heavily on what remains in our reserves at the end of this current school year in order to help meet the projected cost claims for the next school year. Similarly to our self-funded medical and dental insurance, the workers' compensation is also self-funded. And during the original budget build, it was proposed that funding for this be increased by $277,000. Here too, the Board of Education again determined that the district will maintain the current level of funding in this area and continue to rely heavily on what remains in our reserves. Planning for the future. Within this year's budget, 2 positions are being requested: a special education teacher at North Haven High School and a speech and language pathologist. The additional special education teacher at North Haven High School would serve the entire school community. The special education population at the high school continues to grow, and this position will alleviate the current high number of students and hours that our special education teachers and allow our special education teachers to provide more direct and supportive services. A full-time speech and language therapist is requested to support the pre-K and RISE programs. SLP, speech and language pathologist services, are mandated by students' IEPs, which are individual education plans. Adding this position presents a cost savings to the district, as we would need to subcontract out for these services at a much higher cost if this position is not funded. We're mandated to provide these services, and we believe that hiring our own professional is better for the students and more cost-effective for the district. And as I mentioned earlier, the district is planning to transition 10 paraeducators to become registered behavior technicians. This transition would require a wage increase within their collective bargaining agreement. Even with this wage increase, it would still be considered a savings of almost $500,000 because we would not need to subcontract out these services. That concludes my presentation for the Board of Education this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Got to lower that just a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Stirk. And now we will hear from our first electman, Mr. Michael Frieda, for the town government budget.
Before I start the town side of the budget, I wanted to share something with each and every one of you. This is only meant to describe what sometimes are contradictions in local government. If we were to consider that our homes are one of the largest components of our portfolio of overall wealth. Home wealth is described by the addition of all one's assets minus one's liabilities. Those liabilities are mortgages, debt, and come out with a net number. That's the number to crystallize what your individual home wealth is. In government, and this year is a good example, property values have risen 37.5%, home values have skyrocketed, and it looks good on paper in terms of our individual portfolio of wealth. But the paradox is that we, as citizens, have to pay the unrealized gain of that growth. And even though it looks good on paper, we all have to pay for the growth, and we have not yet realized the gain. And that's one of the contradictions that I've seen in local government. It's not just here, it's all over local governments, all over, including probably all parts of the country. So with that being said, let's take a look at the budget, the town side, which is designed to maintain the existing service model that the town already has without cutting any services. We came to the conclusion on the town side that if we were to add what we would like and what we need, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this budget would fail. So this budget on the town side is just to maintain what we have with no cuts in services. So if we take a look at this on the town side, it's a 7% change, and I'm going to explain that momentarily. It's interesting that both the town and the Board of Ed, just to maintain what we both have on both sides of this local government, the dollar figures are just about the same. So we see what the total budget is, and that's the dollar change, the $9,018,744. Again, on the town side, to keep everything the way it is. When we look at this, now it's 50-50, the Board of Ed and the town. This is fiscal year 2025 and 26. Yes, we have debt service we carry on the town side for the Board of Ed, but that's where it is. It's a 50-50 split. We've talked about the residential property values. The appraisals increased by 37.5. Because of this increase, we're able to lower the mill rate. We've said it 5 times before, from 34.64 to 29.46, a 5.18 mill rate decrease. You might be wondering, well, how come they can't go further? It's my estimation that we would need to drop the mill rate somewhere between 11 and 12 mills, maybe closer to 12, to try to get it to a flat tax for everybody, perhaps 12.5 mills. But that requires cutting services in every single department across North Haven, including public safety. We can never do that, and of course, cutting the Board of Education, which we're trying to avoid here, as Patrick talked about in his presentation. So we're down to a 5.18 mill rate decrease. Now, for what it's worth, if we take a 10-year look back, these are the mill rates starting in 2016. It may not help us today, but there were years you see that the mill rate remained the same. So if this budget passes, a couple of revals in here, we started at 30.53 in 2016. We're proposing 29.46. You see the years where nothing's changed. Now, you can pick this apart any way anyone would like, but that's an illustration of what the mill rates have been since 2016. And quite candidly, that's one of the reasons why people moved to North Haven, because of a good mill rate with all the services. And that's why we're seeing the flood of people that are looking to buy homes in North Haven. Goes back to what I mentioned. Supply is low, demand is high. Let's take a look at the grand list growth. This is artificial. I'm going to preface my remarks. We might say, wow, a 28.4% grand list growth. It yielded approximately $925 million $261,731 in incremental revenue. But most of that was because of the property values going up, which are a huge part of the grand list, residential. Here are some of the increases that the town cannot control, which is a byproduct of why there's a 7% increase being proposed here tonight. Employee benefits, pension, Social Security, that increased this coming fiscal year. It will increase versus the current fiscal year, $375,000. Can't cut back on Social Security. FICA is a federal law in terms of contributions from the employer to the employee. Employee medical insurance, $1,319,844. So there might be those watching on TV or watching on Facebook that may say, gee, how can this insurance go up? Well, here's the way it works, ladies and gentlemen. It's called claims history. And unfortunately, both on the Board of Ed side and on the town side, we've had employees with serious illnesses. And when you have a high utilization rate in terms of the employees using the insurance, which they desperately need to do, we get evaluated and reevaluated on 13 months of look back on what the claims history are. And this year, $1,319,000. Debt service. That's gone up almost $400,000, $391,000 to be precise, $391,944. So you might say, well, what does that mean? What kind of debt does the town have? Well, when we look at this 4% increase in debt service, we're still paying on the middle school, the new middle school from about 5 or 6 years ago. We're still paying on the police department building. We're still paying on road paving. These are all bonds that we took out that create debt service. And believe it or not, after all these years, we're still paying for the firehouses. Still paying debt on the firehouses. So these 4 particular infrastructure improvements have to be done in a town. We had dilapidated infrastructure when I took office. That's no reflection on anybody previously to me, but things have to be maintained after a while. And it's like our own homes. You have to update the homes at certain times during the times that you live there, the years that you live there. So the moral of this little graph is this. Just because we see a new police department or a new fire department or a new middle school or a road being paved, that doesn't mean it's been paid for. The payments just begin because the bonds and the borrowing are amortized over a 17-year period on an average. And, I know that's sometimes hard for the average citizen to believe, but the new police department's all paid for. No, it's just starting. So that's why we're seeing this debt service increase. Let's take a look at the capital in this budget. So we'll go by department. So this is the capital that we've put into the budget. This is not the capital that was requested, because across the board, we had to take what the department heads presented to us and pare the request back into what we thought we could afford. So in the fire department, this is at least $300,000 for a fire truck. The fire trucks may range now about $1.3 million in cost. So what we do is we do like a lease to buy. We budget, let's say in this case, $300,000 every year, pay it out over 4 years, maybe 5 years, rather than put $1.2 million or $1.3 million in the budget. That would be an impact to a first-year annual budget when we buy a new vehicle. The capital on the police side, $323,000. The police cruisers, body armor, every cruiser we buy, we have to have an emergency light bar and siren package per car, and then portable radios need to be updated. In terms of the Department of Public Works, mobile radios, and this is a dam safety vegetation removal. It's kind of a mandate we have to do. So Public Works, despite the fact they need trucks, they need vehicles, and I'll say this with all due respect, they're not getting them this year because this is where we're at. In terms of the Recreation Department, this pool maintenance, we have to do that every year, ladies and gentlemen. And that went from 25,000 in previous years to 35,000 now. Now, believe it or not, we have to budget for this reval because there's very few cities and towns that do the revaluation themselves. We have to go out to bid. There's 2 companies in Connecticut that do this, and we go out to bid. We select the company to do the reval, and we budget every year a certain amount of money to fund that revaluation because we have to pay for the reval service. And then IT, we're doing a lot on IT security, on doing phishing things where we're trying to intercept and prevent, our town being hacked. Other cities and towns have been hacked, and they've had to pay ransom to be unhacked, so to speak. So Alex Linos, our IT guy, has done a fabulous job working with our finance department, myself, and my office. And so we're putting $85,000 into IT. So the total capital in this budget is $933,000. Now, this is the difficult part. And I'm going to take you through what has to happen if this budget fails. And it may fail, because there are a lot of people out there saying that when they saw the increases per house, well, that's a lot of money. But I want to be very, very candid here. I've prided myself on being transparent in this government for all these years. I'm telling you things that I've showed you things that a lot of governments will not depict. They may, instead of showing what the taxes are per house, they pick the average house and say it's going up 15 or 18%, without a clearer definition as to what the impact is on what the tax increases will be. We tried to show that earlier. Now, if this budget does not pass because of reval, which has created these issues that we've talked about tonight, the town has absolutely no choice at that point but to look to cut back existing services, because that is what we'd have to do to come back to each and every one of you, those watching on North Haven TV, those streaming live on Facebook. We have to come back with a lower budget. When a budget fails, it's not because people want more in the budget. They want it less. So here's what very likely can happen. There are several areas that have to be considered and implemented per union contractual language. The first thing on the town side is part-time staff would have to be laid off first. All part-timers, or most part-timers, depending on what we think the public is telling us in terms of what this existing proposed budget means for them. Now, on the surface, some may say, well, at least the full-timers will be protected to maintain services, but the part-timers play a critical role in this local government, because there are departments that would be adversely affected by part-time layoffs. And the recreation department, as an example. We could not have any more night meetings there. The recreation center would be shut down and closed at 4:30. So anybody using the rec center, whether they're nonprofits, whomever they may be, we would not be able to have that building open, because the part-timers essentially run the after or evening programs. The library, hours would be affected on the library, because our library director really needs part-timers to maintain the current hours that we have in the library. Our tax department would be somewhat compromised. There may have to be some hour reduction there. Town clerk's office, the same. The finance department, the same. And public works and field operations, they have part-timers that they really need on certain things. When full-timers call in sick, there's a heavy workload sometimes in terms of physicality. People get hurt on sanitation trucks. So public works would be affected also. Now, when we drill it down even further, so what actual services beyond that would be affected? Well, we talked about recreation programs. And that could even lead to, we're not sure yet, would probably lead to summer camps, because the part-timers essentially run that. Pool hours. Now, that's always critical, because seniors and because of high school swimming team, pool hours would have to be compromised. We talked about library programs or library hours, which would lead to programming cuts, and that would be our library director that would tell us what cuts would have to be made. Believe it or not, summer concerts. A lot of people don't realize the part-timers play a key role in the summer concerts during the summer time, and we get people from all over the state coming in there. Bulk leaf pickup. The way we see it right now, we wouldn't totally abandon it, but we'd have to go to a bag leaf program for people, and they'd have to bag their own leaves, and we think we could still pick up those leaves. Now, you may say, what's the difference between bagging leaves and picking up leaves? Why would you consider that in terms of us having to buy bags and then bag our own leaves? Because what goes unnoticed many times is that the Public Works Department has to hire outside contractors to pick up the loose leaves in addition to our own people doing that. So we'd have to eliminate the outside contractors, and Public Works would never be able to get around to do all the leaves with their manpower by the time the winter starts. So we would probably go to a bag leaf pickup. Now, bulk trash. I don't see us ever being able to get rid of all of it, but I think that we'd have to reduce it from 2 to 1 time per year. This is what we see in terms of what will probably happen if this budget fails. On the Board of Education side, we are desperately trying to keep this Board of Education system in place. And by that I mean, we have a great relationship with the Board of Ed. We meet with them all the time. We support the Board of Education. We understand that the fundamental responsibility of local government is for public safety and to support education. Patrick showed you the different iterations of what was requested and what ended up. 6.99% doesn't adversely affect anything. Does it give the Board of Ed what they really need? No. Does the town budget give all the departments what they probably need? No. And the reason that we had to take this approach is because of skyrocketing property values. We recognize it's a burden for the taxpayers to put in everything that we would have liked to have. So what would happen if this fails? Well, what would happen is we would give the Board of Education an aggregate number. That number could range from $750,000 to $1 million. We'd have to equally distribute a cut on both sides. That would be devastating, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a critical situation. This is a call for action and analysis. And when I say analysis, it boils down to this. We're proposing a budget that doesn't add much, but we're proposing a budget here tonight that keeps everything exactly the way it is. And the question is this, and it'll be your decision, those here, those watching on North Haven TV, and those watching on Facebook streaming live. Are you willing to still pay for these services? That's the question that you have to ask. Do you want to maintain the services, knowing the cost of those services has risen dramatically, largely because of the revaluation? And it's something that I hope you really contemplate. We will have another meeting here in May. We're going to be opening it up here to public comment to hear what people think. There will be a referendum in May. And based upon what you tell us, that is what we're going to do. Now, just to recap, this budget supports the Board of Education request of 6.99. It supports the existing public safety model. It covers the inflationary increase in the existing services that are also part of this, that are multiplied by the reval and the property values that have the way they've gone up. And once again, it maintains the existing service model. And coming to a close here, these are some key dates. Board of Finance meeting April 16th at 6:30. That meeting will be based on the feedback that we hear here tonight. The annual budget town meeting, Monday, May 12th, 7 p.m. We'll be back here again presenting this budget. And then the referendum is on Tuesday, May 20th at the Mildred Wakely Rec Center. I thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. I appreciate all of you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frieda and Mr. Stark. So we're going to open up the public hearing to questions and comments. Again, we're going to go 5, max 10 minutes per turn. If you run out of time, then you get to come back up. Please come up to the, I think it might, I think it's fine. The microphone's right up here. Say your name and your address. And are there any questions? Raise your hand if you'd like to come up. I think Mrs. Boehme was first, and then we'll have Mr. Miller. I think it's okay. I knocked it off earlier.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Sally Boehme, 5 Blossom Drive. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen for the past 12 years. I have a different approach to showing you the tax increases rather than by house style. I thought I'd tell you some actual tax increases. I have a very small house. It's about 1,300 square feet, much smaller than average. My taxes are going up $700. Mike Frieda, who has a much larger house, larger than average, his taxes are going up $1,772. But I decided to look at the five major neighborhoods. Our town is built of neighborhoods. So I looked at Sandy Acres, which is between Washington Avenue and Pool Road, George Street, Lynette, all those houses. A house on Thorpe Street is going up $1,216. Up in the Bicentennial subdivision at the top of Surrey Hill, where all the streets are named after the Revolutionary War, Sentinel Hill Road house is going up $1,533. In the Grove, South Avenue, a house is going up $931. In the Ridge, Whitney area, Buell Street, a house is going up $1,282. And for Montouise, I picked 2 because it's so big. Rock Road is going up $1,371, and Orient Lane is going up $1,519. There are 3 reasons why the homeowners' taxes are going up so much. First, as Mr. Frieda talked about, is the reval. Residential properties, your houses, went up the most because house prices last summer, the months preceding the October 1st, 2024 grand list date, were just out of control. So the residential went up 37.5%. We also have commercial industrial, which did not go up quite as much. Personal property hardly went up at all, 7.5%. Personal property is what the property that businesses use to conduct their business, such as equipment, computers. Over at Amazon, they have a lot of robots and conveyor belts. That's personal property. And lastly, motor vehicle. So you have to think of the grand list as a pie, and the piece of the residential pie has grown. And that is why we have this shift. The reval has shifted a major portion of the tax-paying obligation onto the homeowners. Our grand list grew by almost $1 billion, $925 million, an unprecedented amount. Most importantly, the residential part increased by $687 million, again, unprecedented. For comparison, the last grand list of 2019, the last reval we had which was the grand list of 2019, residential actually decreased by 11 million. So that reval had little impact on your house taxes, so it really wasn't noteworthy. There were hardly any people here. So that was, so that is a comparison, a huge increase on residential homeowners. Also that year, the last grand list, the last reval, we had a big jolt from Amazon. They finally made it onto the grand list after their big facility was completed. There were no jolts this time, unless you count the jolt you might have had when you got your assessment notice last November. Speaking of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, who's one of the richest billionaires in the world, he pays a lot of personal property tax. And as I said, personal property is only going up 7.5%. The mill rate is going down 15%. That billionaire is paying less property tax to the town of North Haven, whereas you homeowners are paying a lot more. It's quite a world. The second reason why your house taxes are going up is because the budget has gone up by $9 million in additional spending, $9 million more than the current year. The $9 million in additional spending is not because of the reval. The proposed budget simply has $9 million more in spending. You can see the breakdown at the bottom of page 4 on the budget book. The town, $4,467,000 increase, Board of Ed, $4,473,000, etc. The mill rate is set by the Board of Finance after the budget is approved. The mill rate has to be high enough to fund the, to fully fund the expenditure side. So the mill rate will determine your taxes based on your new assessment, which leads me to the third reason your house taxes are going up, and that's because other sources of revenue are lower. If you look at page 7 and 8 of your budget book, which is income, you'll see 44 different sources of revenue. All those revenue sources must total the spending amount of $137.6 million. If you look at page 6, you'll see a summary of that revenue, and it's called funding. The property taxes make up the largest part. Last year, it made up 86.8%, $111 million came from your property taxes. This year, however, 88.6% of funding is coming from your taxes, and that is because other sources of funding are either lower or non-existent. Therefore, your property taxes are picking up the slack. So that's the third reason. So the reval is sort of a punch in the gut. The $9 million budget increase is a little jab, and then you have other sources of funding are down, so you have to pick up that slack. So here's what I tell you. This is what I want to say. If you could afford this tax increase, and you think the $9 million in additional spending is justified, then vote yes. If you cannot afford the tax increase, or you don't think the $9 million increase is justified, then vote no. It's as simple as that. I do want to say one thing about this unrealized gain. You might hear people say tonight, well, you should be happy that your houses are worth more. You're going to make more money when you sell it. That's not necessarily true. I have been a real estate attorney for 41 years, and during that time, I've seen at least 2 full, complete up-down cycles of house values. So my crystal ball's in the shop. I don't know what's going to happen with house taxes. If you were to sell now, you'd probably do well, but you might want to sell in 10 years. And based on what's going on in the world, it's hard to say. One more thing, the $9 million increase that we have is the highest increase that we've ever had in one single year. I'm going to give a little history lesson. North Haven was incorporated in 1786. 233 years later, in 2019, for the first time, we cracked the $100 million budget line 6 years ago. Now we're at 137.6, and if we continue at this rate of increase, then in 6 more years, we'll be at $200 million. In closing, I want to acknowledge the passing of Ann Rocco. She died out of state on March 20th, but she lived most of her life in North Haven. She was a personal hero of mine. I knew her while I served on the Board of Finance in the late 1980s. She changed North Haven history. She fought against high taxes. She founded the North Haven Taxpayer Association. But here is what is relevant to all of us here tonight. This is what she did. Back in those days, when I was on the Board of Finance, there were no referendums. The proposed budget was either adopted or rejected at the budget town meeting, and only a few dozen people attended that meeting, and they were mostly town employees, and they always voted yes, or else, I'm sure. So Ann Rocco didn't like that system, and she petitioned, through the petitioning process, she forced a budget referendum in 1990. And we have had referendums ever since because of her. And our referendums is really at the crux of our democratic system here, our town meeting form of government. It's the last bit of democracy we really have is at the local level. And this referendum is so important, and it's all because of Ann Rocco. 6,000 people voted in the first budget referendum. A few years ago, we had 600. Ann Rocco
That's 10
changed
minutes.
our history, and the best way that you could honor her is to please vote in the referendum. Thank you for those few seconds. She was a great lady who changed North Haven history. Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Hi, my name is Steve Miller. I live at 116 Millbrook here in North Haven. I am a Connecticut Realtor serving as the 2025 president of the Connecticut Realtors with 45 years of experience in the real estate industry. What I want to talk about today is partly where the reval comes from. And I'm going to go back to 2019 with a little insight of what the market was like then and how it compares now. At this time of year, in 2019, there were 185 properties for sale in North Haven. Today, there are 30 active listings in North Haven. Back then, 106 properties under contract. Today, 32. 102 closed transactions. Year to date, there are 23 closed transactions. So we're seeing North Haven being very desirable, and people are moving here, leaving the inventory very low, and things are selling very quickly. What's also important to know is the average price then was $291,000. Today, it's pushing $450,000. The percentage of list to sale price back then was 96.7%. Today, it's 101.9%. So the market is driving prices higher and higher because of the desirability of North Haven. That computes to an average increase in equity of $152,000. So that is what's driving the market and driving the reevaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, in the back there, at the very end in the dark shirt.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ria Violano. I am from 126 Elm Street in North Haven, and I am the local coordinator for the North Haven Special Olympics. We are a year-round sports program that serves close to 100 athletes with intellectual disabilities, in case you didn't know who we were. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the heart and soul of the Special Olympics community with hopes of not having cuts to our recreational department programs. If the budget was not to pass and there were cuts, as you heard, the part-time staff may or may not be eliminated, which would cause direct devastation to our program. The program is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. It is where athletes discover confidence, partners find purpose, and friendships are formed that last a lifetime. The recreational programs are more than just activities. They are opportunities for joy, inclusion, growth, and healing. For our athletes, recreational opportunities are where they're part of something greater than themselves. It's where they're cheered for, not just for winning, but for showing up, for trying, for being who they are. It's where their spirits are lifted, where their talents shine, where there is no judgment, and where their dreams can take flight. For our coaches, unified partners, our volunteers, our families that are all very involved right here in North Haven, it's where they connect, contribute, and come to understand the true meaning of unity and compassion. It's where walls come down and communities are built. Cuts to our program would be devastating, as I stated, to those who desperately need this outlet, especially the pool. We use the pool for our swim team. We have over 22 athletes that swim, that compete year-round and use the pool. As a power of reference of excellence for this program for North Haven, we were just awarded the Outstanding Program of the Year by Special Olympics for North Haven. So, thank you. It's directly involved for all our families who are involved, our volunteers, the recreation department, the staff at the recreation department. Let's protect what matters. Let's support what works. Let's honor our athletes and preserve the programs that allow them to thrive, not just in sports, but in life. Please say yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Please raise your hand if you'd like to come up. In the back, all the way to the back. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. I actually attend North Haven High School, so I'm one of the people who will
Sweetie, I need you to say your name and your address.
Alice Gabriel and 18 Renee Lane. I am one of the people who will be affected by the budget if it does not pass, and I attend some of the programs that may be shut down, and I know some of the teachers that could lose their jobs. And that is why it is my opinion that to not approve of this budget would be depriving this town's kids of a good education. I know what some of the programs can do for kids, and I know how good some of the teachers are. And I do not think that it is fair to get rid of opportunities for people like me who are affected by this budget just because you were given bad information about taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right straight ahead. I can't see you, but you have a right beforehand. And then after you, Mr. Friedman. Sorry. It's dark out there. I can't really see y'all. And I just want to say, I think it's wonderful when the young people of our community get involved because they are the future.
Brian Test on Maple Avenue. I basically have questions. First of all, thank you to both Mrs. Sturck and Mr. Frieda with the presentation because it answered a lot of my questions. But on the Board of Ed side, you mentioned a $6.5 million budget in the special education. My main questions are, how many students are affected or part of this? Are they all in-town residents, or if there's any out-of-district, meaning coming from other towns, coming into North Haven, if we provide that? The special education, is it federally or state mandated? And if it's funded or unfunded by either the federal government or the state government? I know there's a lot of talk up in Hartford about that. There was no mention on the buses, I know we had a big bus budget on the buses. Has there already been an audit of how many students take the buses compared to how many our parents drop them off not using the budget out of the 3,134 students that are townwide? And I didn't get a packet, so I don't know how many teachers are and aides are part of the school system, if you know those numbers. I know normally you put in the budget packet how many administrators, things like that. So I'll start with the Board of Ed side, my questions, and then I have a few on the town side.
Mr. President, I hate to make you start again.
Have
You go one by one?
Out of the $6.5 million budget on special education, are all the students that are in that program or programs, are they all North Haven residents? Or if there are people coming out of the district, how many come outside the district, meaning
So
different towns?
the district participates in the Open Choice Program with New Haven, so we do have some students identified for special education services that do currently live in New Haven through that program. So they're all not North Haven residents.
Okay. Who pays for the out-of-district students coming to North Haven using our programs?
So are you talking specifically to the New Haven students?
Or any out-of-district, yes.
So we pay for their regular education services, and we bill New Haven for anything above and beyond.
That answered that question. On the buses, how many
Ridership.
students, has there ever been an audit of how many students compared to how many your people dropped
So
off?
I'd have to get you those numbers, but there's a ridership audit that the bus company conducts. I don't know those numbers currently.
And then teachers, how many teachers are employed townwide compared to the administrators?
320-ish, 320 teachers, certified staff,
How many?
320.
Okay. All right, you answered
And
all.
you asked about non-certified. I don't have that number for you, but I do believe we are over 500 as a total. So,
Give or take.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the town side, I have just a few questions. Again, Mr. Frieda answered quite a few of my questions that I had written down.
Good to see you, Brian. How have you been?
Hanging in there. Just a couple quick questions. I didn't see anything on the pensions compared to the 401s. I know over the time we've transitioned from pensions to a 401k system. Are the pension system that we have in existence, is that fully funded or being fully funded?
We make 100% of the annual required contribution every year, as is told to us what we need to do by our Siegel. They're our consulting company. So every year we make 100% of that contribution. One year we added about $525,000, but it's something that we really monitor very diligently, and our ratios are very well, and the rating agencies like the fact we fund it 100%.
Has that increased or decreased or stayed flat in this
Well,
budget?
What happens, Brian, is it's a difficult answer, but I'll try to simplify it. So there's always an ebb and flow, meaning that some years the annual required contribution may be higher, some years it's lower if people retire, and then we bring someone in at a 457 401A program, which, ladies and gentlemen, is those are two acronyms for what you would know to be a 401K program.
And the last question, and I know it was requested in the budget on the firehouse side. Do you know the amount of I think it was either 2 or 4 firefighters that was requested? What was that amount that was requested and not put in the budget?
Oh, so the fire chief presented 4 additional firefighters with an estimated cost. This is what was presented of $506,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a gentleman in the back who had his hand up. Would you like to come up, sir? All righty, and then after him, I think you missed Mr. Friedman? You were next? Okay.
Good evening. George McCrory, 511 Elm Street. A lot of questions that my wife and I had gone through the budget completely and were answered tonight, and we appreciate that. And we really don't want to see the school budget cut, the town budget cut. Actually, there's some things in the school budget that we wish were back in because there's mold in some of the school systems which are affecting some of the kids, which is really not good. But I think I can look out at the audience and see we have a lot of senior citizens here like myself, and this budget, which is going to be somewhat to the tune of $1,000, $1,500 per person, per family, is going to hit us hard because we're on fixed incomes. We're not ones that can go out and just go make some more money, and I can't just touch my equity all the time. So, you know, I don't know which way we're going to go. But I think I speak for a lot of people that say this is why we're here, because this is going to affect us quite a bit. And I don't know anybody else has an extra $100 a month to throw at it, but it's going to add up. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Friedman?
Hi, my name is Scott Friedman, 17 Cooper Road. First and foremost, I want to thank all the work that went into preparing the budget. I also want to acknowledge that Chairman Katz is not here, and I miss him because I always expected and depended on his comments for every budget meeting. I'm here in strong support of the budget. I have a child at Ridge Road, second grade, and in the ID program, and it's a program that I think many people would pay to go to a private school to get multi-age classrooms, project-based learning. But that kind of education is not available if we don't invest in our town. I want to point out also from the education budget side that last year after the budget referendum failed, there was $1 million cut to the medical insurance reserves. One of the top line items that went up this year was the medical and dental insurance by almost $1.5 million. Those types of cuts to what the actuaries, the people who determine our insurance rates, tell us we need to have on hand, do have impact on the classroom. They do have impact on the perception of the education budget. And I'm here to tell you that if we don't sort of fund the reserve accounts that help to keep our insurance rates down, we're going to see greater increases each year than we cut out of it last year. Just, you know, from a general perspective, I also appreciate how hard this budget year was with the reval and the extent to which it's hard to understand you're getting a mill rate reduction, but your assessment went up. I also want to be safe in my home, and I feel like we are in need of additional firefighters. We heard that from the chief. And we're also, I think at this point, we're in need of looking at how we develop and how it impacts the fire department to get some kind of staffing plan in order, because I feel like it's been at least a few years since we've hired new firefighters. I also want to really appreciate the fact that we are hiring 2 lines for folks who are retiring before they retire so that we don't end up down 2 firefighters while they're in training. All in all, I'm here to fully support the budget and investment in our town. There's a reason a lot of us moved here, and there's a reason that the housing stock is so low. And that's because more people are moving here for a good school system, a safe community, and you know, one that is developing, I think, in a really great way. We just need to fund it. And so thank you so much for your work. Thank you everyone for coming out. This is probably the best showing of any meeting I've been to in years. So thank you all.
Right here, ma'am. And then next will be you, Dot.
Hi, Krista Kaplan, 14 Governors Drive. For those of you who have never met me before, hello. I'm a mother of 4 children here in North Haven. They're all North Haven students, some at Montauk, some at the middle school. I'm co-president of the Montauk School PTA. I coach sports here in town. I'm a teacher at North Haven Middle School and a team leader. And I'm president of the North Haven Education Association, which represents our 325 teachers here in North Haven. So to say I'm an invested member in our community is a large understatement. But first, I wanted to take a minute to express my sincere gratitude to the Board of Education and the group of Board of Finance members for your unwavering support of our schools, our students, and our teachers. Your advocacy throughout the budgeting process this year was deeply appreciated and reinforced our shared commitment to providing the best possible education for children here in North Haven. As we move forward, we must acknowledge a hard truth. While the requested 6.99% budget increase is higher than what we have seen in the past, it is not excessive, it is essential. As Superintendent Stark highlighted, the Board of Education's initial request was significantly higher, reflecting the true needs of our schools. Through extensive review and difficult decision-making, every possible cut has already been made. The budget has been stripped down to the bare minimum needed to maintain the quality of education that North Haven families expect and deserve. At this point, there's nothing left to cut without lasting impacts and harms to our students. Any further reduction means losing teachers, support staff, interventionists, and the very programs that make North Haven, North Haven. Class sizes will increase, specialized support services will be reduced, extracurricular activities, the very programs that shape our students' experiences and prepare them for the future will be eliminated. We are not talking about trimming excess. We are talking about losing essential pieces of what makes North Haven schools strong. As Mr. Frieda presented, this year's budget presents unique challenges. With property reevaluations adding financial uncertainty and a budget request higher than what has historically passed at referendum, we know this will not be easy. However, one thing is clear. If we do not stand together and fight for this budget for our schools and our students, we will pay the price, and our services in town will be greatly reduced. Since I'm a history teacher and somebody prior mentioned history, a little history recap for our referendums. The budget referendum costs this town on average about $40,000 each year. And though I'm a proponent of democracy and that process, the voter turnout does not justify that cost. Last year, our voter turnout was 7.5% of registered voters in this town. At the second referendum, it increased slightly to 9.5%. The year prior, in 2023, only 673 people voted. We need to do better. Collaboration is key. We must show up, not just here tonight, but at every town meeting. Last year, again, for some history, after the first referendum failed, $950,000 of the $1.7 million that was cut came from the side of the Board of Education. A cut like that this year would be devastating and cut teachers just as it did back in 2010 when $850,000 was cut after the failed referendum and 8 teaching positions went with it. Again, in 2015, the additional $500,000 was cut out of the board's budget. This year, we cannot afford cuts like that. This budget will not pass without our collective effort. If we do not mobilize, if we do not vote, the cuts will deepen. Teachers will lose their jobs, students will lose their resources and opportunities they need to succeed. The very foundation of what makes the North Haven community that values education will be weakened. So to every parent, educator, and community member, this is our moment. We must speak up, stand together, and make our voices heard. We must rock the vote at this referendum because the future of our schools and our town depend on it. Thank you.
Dorothy Logan, 2065 Hartford Turnpike. And my first reaction to Krista was Krista. I remember Krista as an elementary student at Montaouise, and I think the teachers back then did a great job. That was a great speech. Hey, Krista. Very, very proud. I am a senior citizen, and I am supporting the budget. And I have to say, you know what, when I think of that bill coming in July, I'm getting a little bit of agita. But I also remember having lived in this town for the last 50 years and working in the school system back in the 1990s, what it was like when we had multiple referendums going down. It makes me a little bit sick to my stomach thinking about it. So please, I hope we can support the budget, get it passed on the first time. And as much as I would like to stand here and beg, to support the education budget, I'm going to be selfish this year because I also, on a personal note, really support the fire department. When I moved to North Haven, I was young. No health issues. We all had young families. We're in our 20s and 30s. We never saw a fire engine. We never saw an ambulance. Well, fast forward 40 years, and my neighbors and I were senior citizens, and we look out, there's the fire department, here comes the ambulance. And I would really support, hopefully, that with any additional money, that we can hire more firefighters, because I know it's important to have fast response time, and I would like that for anybody in North Haven. Thank you. Please support the budget. Come out and vote.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see you. Come on up. Thank you for helping me see.
Marge Quinn, Pierpont Hill condos, 21 Newberry Court. I have a different question. On the presentation, I didn't see any condos, so I don't know where that fits in with how you determined your budget.
Thank you for the question, Marge. So it was difficult to compile the average condo value, so I would say the best way to approach it from what it means for those who live in condos, and we can provide that slide, we can send it to you, that I presented earlier. When you look at the dollar values of those homes, a condo should fall somewhere near those values, and you use that as a illustration, the slide. You use that to determine what the approximate increase in taxes would be. So as an example, if the condo value, if the colonial home that I mentioned had a dollar amount of, let's say, $500,000, what I showed earlier, if your condo is worth that, then that's what it would be. If it's $364 in terms of value, your assessed value and your appraised value, you can get that information at the assessor's office from what's called a field card. So in other words, take the value of where you live and which condo it is, compare it to the 11 different values that I outlined earlier, and that would be the answer to the question. Marge, come on up, please. Right. So no, I mean,
We don't have the services that the town has.
Yeah, that's
almost all of them.
So here's the way it works, folks, okay? That's not something we can control. The way it works in a condo is we reimburse the condo associations for the trash pickup, and it's a percentage of occupancy. But to Marge's point, on snow plowing, they have to hire somebody to have the snow being plowed. This is not just North Haven. You know, if you look at some of these condos, we couldn't get a snow plow in there because the streets may not be 32 feet wide like an average road would be. So Marge is right, but there's not something that, there's no mechanism, there's no remedy for that. All we can do is continue to reimburse the condo associations for the trash pickup, what it costs them, we reimburse them, but the snow plowing.
But that's not the whole cost of it. It's a little percentage.
It's a percentage of the occupancy.
Right.
So in other words, if 70% of the condos are occupied. It's usually that percentage they get reimbursed. So that's the way it is. But I understand your point, and I had anticipated that question tonight also. So thank you for the question. I can't wave a magic wand on this one, Marge. We go back a long way, you and I, right?
All right.
So I can't wave a magic wand to make that
I had to
go
say
away.
it.
I know you did. I know. So thank you.
Yes, sir. And while this gentleman walks up to the microphone, I'll tell you there's this great resource where you can reach out and ask this person or the people who work with her about what your taxes will be based on this mill rate, and that person is me. The most popular person in North Haven, the tax collector. So, call my office, and I will tell you exactly what you're looking for. I know there are a lot of people who say, hey, call me, because I'm the one that's going to know exactly. And if not me, someone in my office will be pleased to help you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jim Buck, 31 Ansonia Drive. So I'm here to support the budget. I appreciate the work Mr. Frieda and Mr. Stirk have put into this to keep the budget basically maintaining services. We don't see a budget here with a lot of excess. They're maintaining the services. So I appreciate your focus on being conservative with that approach. It's a tough budget year, as you mentioned. But I want to give you kind of three different things to think about. So, my first house when my wife and I got married was in Hamden. It was a starter home. And when we learned my wife was pregnant and we wanted to raise a family, I said, no, we're going to purchase in North Haven. And we bought our house in North Haven. We've raised our 3 kids through the school system that I also attended. And we don't regret a moment. Obviously, those services come at a cost. So I'm also a fire administrator in a neighboring municipality. And we've heard a couple mentions tonight of firefighters. So I would like to strongly encourage the administration and the members of the Board of Finance to incorporate and find a way to increase the staffing of our fire department. We hear a lot about mutual aid. Mutual aid is an important resource for public safety agencies. We recently utilized North Haven's resources at a structure fire in our municipality. But it's not for the regular, everyday surging calls that North Haven sees, that other municipalities see. And I want to bring it back a little bit more personal, in that my mother, who's owned her home since the mid-1950s, so that's 70 years of paying taxes here, she's seen a lot of benefits in doing so. She's seen her children go to school here. She's seen the leaf pickup, the bulk pickup, and she's also utilized the fire department. And she's done so very recently, as she's in her 90s now. And I think we want to make sure those resources are there for her. And when she's called the fire department out and they're tied up assisting her for 30 minutes or greater, that's another fire department unit that's not available for all of you. So join my mother, and I want to really reach out to the seniors here and encourage this budget and also the support of our public safety agencies. Thank you.
Mrs. White?
Mary White, Summer Lane, town resident for 35 years. We have a public health and safety hazard in town relative for the need for firefighters in the fire department. Here are some responsibilities of the Board of Finance: preparation of the town budget, setting the annual tax rate, approval of all special appropriations and transfers between appropriations, responsibility for the town's accounting system, providing for the annual audit, publication of the annual report. Department heads must submit their budgets and their requests to the finance director and to the first selectman. The fire chief did so and submitted on November 27, 2024 for 4 new firefighters. The Board of Finance has the power of the purse. The Board of Finance elected members expect and are required to receive department heads' budgets as they are submitted to the Finance Director and to the First Selectman. The request for 4 new firefighters did not make it to the Board of Finance as required, permitting them to pare back the request. The Board of Finance does this paring back during declinations. We asked the Finance Director and First Selectman to fetch the November 27, 2024 email with the fire chief's request for the 4 new firefighters and forward it to the Board of Finance before the next Board of Finance meeting, thus setting a wrong right. The Board of Finance decides what is and what is not included in the town budget. January 11th, 2025, Fire Department Budget Workshop, 1 hour, 4 minutes, 36 seconds. Fire Chief, quote, "What I'm looking for here is 4 firefighters in this next budget year, and it would be at an expense of $506,000. We need to start looking at increasing the number of firefighters per shift," close quote. Now a question for all to consider. Can the North Haven Fire Department respond to your 911 call? I'll have an answer at the end of my comments. Here is important data some of you may not be aware of. 46% of 911 calls occur simultaneously. There is a shortage of volunteer firefighters with only 19 on the roster and 15 qualified. 2 fire stations are closed during the day. Northeast closed 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. West Ridge closed 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The volunteer firefighters work during the day and cannot man the stations. Last year, 64 calls to 911 went NFU. The CAT assigned no fire unit, or there was a delayed response, or there was an insufficient response. There are 4 shifts of career firefighters. 10 firefighters is the minimum. There are 2 shifts of 10, 2 shifts of 11. Approximately $90,000 is saved on shifts with 11, since when 1 firefighter is off, no mandatory contractual overtime obligation to fill the shift back to the 10 minimum is needed. We heard firefighters cannot be included in this budget cycle because of revaluation. Last year, there was no revaluation, and no new firefighters were included in the budget. The year before, there was no revaluation, and no new firefighters were included in the budget. When there is a 911 call for a medical emergency, such as a heart attack, you want the North Haven Fire Department to respond because they have paramedics, whereas Nelson has EMTs and cannot guarantee to have a paramedic. Paramedics, for example, can establish an IO access, vascular access, and they can start an IV to administer important medication, anti-clotting medication, and this can be the difference between life and death. For those who support the Board of Education side of the budget, and who support the budget, and who support teachers and children, it is not enough if you do not support their safety as well. What happens if, for example, there is a fire alarm going off at one of our schools during the day in the winter? All the teachers and children are evacuated and are outside in the cold waiting for the fire department, and no one responds because they are another call on the highway. This 911 call for the fire alarm came in simultaneously, but after the 911 call for an accident on the highway. Adding $250,000 to the proposed town budget of $137,599,076 with a proposed mill rate of 29.46, the $250,000 is only an approximate 0.0018 mill increase. It is important to include 2 new firefighters in the budget, which the cost in comparison to the whole budget is fractions. When people come up to support the Board of Ed's side of the budget, or the budget as a whole, please also support public safety and the fire department. Tell the Board of Finance it is a priority for you. You want your tax dollars spent there. Tell the Board of Finance to add 2 firefighters to the budget and add 2 firefighters in next year's budget. And finally, the question again. Can the North Haven Fire Department respond to your 911 call? Answer, maybe. That is not good enough when you are talking life and death.
Thank you. One moment, please. I have a comment by our Board of Finance.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm Tim Downey. I'm chairman of the Board of Finance here in town, and I just want to make a couple of comments, but mostly just address one thing that Mary just said a moment ago. Can you hear me now? What's the matter? All right, we'll try this the old-fashioned way. Just restarting then. I'm Tim Downey. I'm the chairman of the Board of Finance here in town. And I just want to make a couple comments, but mostly respond to just one thing that Mary said just a moment ago. So first of all, and foremost, I want you to know that all the members of the Board of Finance are keenly aware of just how difficult a budget year this is. Obviously, we're all North Haven residents, and some of the increases that you saw Mike put up earlier are going to affect all of us. And I can tell you personally, my percent wasn't up on that board. My house is not that unusual, but for some reason, my house is going up 49%, and that's not because I put an addition on. So I don't need to answer that, but I can tell you one thing, I'll feel it personally. But just on one thing, look, the department heads in town are all very enthusiastic. They're very professional, and when they come before us for the workshops, they're strong advocates for their departments. Sometimes if it's public works, it might be for equipment. Obviously for police and fire, it's for apparatus and for staff. And Chief Januszewski always gives us a great presentation. He's very well informed, and he comes with numbers. But as a board, we have to somehow decide amongst all these competing interests. And I do think down the road, we're going to have to look at additional firefighters. But I did just want to address one thing that Mary said. I think what she said was there were 60 or 64 times, Mary, last year where there was no unit, no NFU, I think you said, no unit dispersed. Just to be clear, we have a contract with Nelson Ambulance. It requires that there are 2 ambulances in town all times, and one of those has to be staffed by a paramedic. So Mary may be right that a firefighting unit did not respond, but an ambulance at least did respond in those cases. So I just want to make sure that the residents understand that we are looking out for their safety, and they are going to have at least an ambulance respond in those situations. So I did just want to clarify that. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Yes.
Good evening, all. My name is Amanda Strong, 70 Lexington Gardens. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. So I am a professor at Southern Connecticut State University. I'm also the president of the Green Acres PTA. And most importantly, I am the mom of 1 current and 1 future North Haven Nighthawk. And it's important for me to say that I'm here to fully support the Board of Education budget that's on the table. So in North Haven, we pride ourselves on the values that make our community strong: resilience, dedication, spirit of cooperation. And in fact, I am a transplant here. My family moved to North Haven in 2018 from across the country. We had no idea where to live. We knew the North Haven or the New Haven area would have to be our home just from a commute for work. And North Haven gave us the opportunity of what we thought was a really bright future. And we saw how great it was when we chose to live here. You know, but we also need to recognize, when we think about the budget and moving forward with maintaining our teachers, our students, we cannot carry on just grit alone. For years, we've asked schools and teachers and students to do more with less. And while grit is an important trait that our students and staff have demonstrated time and time again, it's not enough to ensure a high-quality education for every child. Our teachers are working tirelessly to provide the best education they can, but they cannot do it on grit alone. Our children are deserving of more. As a community, we understand that the challenges of the past years have been tough on everyone, but we cannot continue to ask our schools to stretch resources even thinner. The notion that we can just do more with less is not sustainable. It risks undermining the very foundation of what makes our town and our schools great. Cutting back on education funding impacts class sizes by making them bigger, less one-on-one attention, reduction of educational programs, extracurriculars, and most importantly, it impacts the quality of education that our children are receiving. This budget is an investment in our future and the futures of our children, our teachers, and our community. It ensures that all of our schools remain equipped with the resources they need to foster creativity, creative thinking, and success. The ability to innovate and inspire cannot be achieved if we continue to ask our educators to do more with less. They need our support, and more importantly, our children need it. When we were looking at Towns to Live, I often kind of look, and I tell my students this in the classroom too, you need to connect with the values of where you're entering in. If you're looking for an employer, see what they care about, right? And so when we don't actually have a town motto in North Haven, but when we look at our town's website or promotional materials, we see something that always says, remain committed and strong with a bright future here in North Haven. So I want everyone to reflect on that commitment by supporting the Board of Education budget. And this is our opportunity to ensure a bright, successful future for every student here in North Haven. So overall, I hope that you all ensure the support to the budget as a whole. But I really do focus on education of our children and ensure they have the tools they need to thrive and not just survive. Thank you all.
Thank you. Did I see a hand of someone up top?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Blake Kozlowski. I live at 12 Monroe Street. I just wanted to start with saying I'm a first-time homeowner here in North Haven, and as many of you said, you really enjoy the community and love it. Several of you have started families here. There was a gentleman beforehand who said he had moved from Hamden to North Haven several years ago. I know these are difficult decisions, and as a first-time attendee at this event, I can definitely see the hard choices that have to be made. I'm not saying yes or no to the budget. I'm just giving you a first-time homeowner's perspective. When I had first moved to North Haven, I was thrilled. I live very close to my family. They're currently in attendance at this meeting as well. It's very hard in the market today for a young person to become a homeowner. It takes a lot of dedication, sacrifice, and, as all of you have known, it's hard. You learn different things about being a homeowner, right? Something breaks, got to figure it out. I think from a young person's perspective and a first-time homeowner's perspective, seeing the tax bill go up is kind of a shock to the system, It's hard. We all have that American dream of being a homeowner, starting a family someday, and really, just enjoying a little slice of just life. And it just makes it hard. On one hand, the youth of today are just getting into their professional careers. I know I'm early in my development, going, in the professional services. And it kind of makes you wonder, why don't I just rent when taxes are going to almost be exactly the same as what I could be paying in a rental space versus owning? I think we've heard a lot of different perspectives tonight, and I just wanted to provide my own. I think we just need to look at different perspectives of things. From what I've heard, I kind of agree with the Board of Education's budget. I think it has a lot of good potential. I think we need to look at different areas. Prior to this meeting, I was reviewing the proposed budget. I think one area that sticks out to me is external auditors' fees are going to increase by 39% over the next year. I know it's small comparative to the overall budget, but I think we need to potentially, scope out some other external auditors, maybe see if there's any other areas, right? If you watch the pennies, it adds up to dollars. And in the long run, it can kind of reduce some of the expenditures and hopefully, maintain the Board of Education. I think that's really useful for our youth. I, as many of you have, gone through the public education system, and that's beneficial to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jenny? Mrs. Caldwell?
Jenny Caldwell, 69 Kimberly Circle. So I'm here tonight to say that I do not support the budget as it is. For the reasons that Mr. Frieda earlier said, most people don't vote against the budget for what it doesn't have. And for me, I will not vote for this budget because it does not include the additional firefighters that our fire chief has been telling us for several years that we need. I think it's imperative that when you call 911, that there is a response. And Mr. Donahue said that that the ambulance company will show up, but that the NFU incidents for last year does not necessarily relate to the need for an ambulance, because if you're on the highway trapped in your car, it's not the ambulance that's getting you out. If your house is on fire, it is not the ambulance that's going to pull you out. If your child is locked in a hot car, it is not the ambulance that is going to get them out. So it is imperative that we staff our fire department so that they can show up. I think Mary gave a lot of the statistics about why it is that this need for the fire department has continued to increase. We have not put a new firefighter on staff in the last 3 years. So I cannot support a budget that does not include the most basic of public safety, which is the ability of our fire department to respond to 911. And I think that we have places to go to look at our budget to see where can we cut the increases that have been asked for. We can start with reducing the raises that were put in the budget for the first selectman and for the director of Board of Finance that equal $20,000 each this year. I think we can look at our Public Works Department where there are 2 directors of finance. Maybe we reduce back to 1 director of finance like it used to be in the past. In terms of the police department, they've added staff year after year after year. Maybe this is the year that we don't increase the police department. In terms of services, I am happy to bag my leaves and save money for the town in order to have leaf pickup save money. I think that when we're looking at our convenience or dumping site, we can do what other towns do, which is not unlimited free dumping no matter what the weight is and how many times you use it. Maybe you weigh, and after a certain amount, you pay for that amount. Bulk pickup. Maybe we add, if you use the bulk pickup, you pay for it, a small fee like we do with sewer. So those are a few ideas. In terms of the Board of Ed, I 100% agree we should not be cutting students, staff, or services. There's a lot of work that has been done to bring special ed programs back to the district, which I think has saved money. But I also think there are places to look at when it comes to the Board of Education. When we look at our administrators at our high school and our middle school, the student to administrator ratio drops in the elementary school. It's around 300 to 400 students per administrator. At the high school and middle school, you are with the principal and assistant principals dropping a percentage or ratio of 1 administrator for every 200 somewhere between 225 to 250 students. Assistant principal salaries are very high, and they grow each year with the 2% increase. So our administrative staff costs, or assistant principals, can cost anywhere from $150,000 to $170,000, with increases between $4,000 and $7,000. So those are some areas that we can look at. We also have 9 curriculum and instruction coordinators that are full-time curriculum and instruction coordinators with no teaching responsibility, and then an additional, I think it's 5 or 6 curriculum and instruction coordinators that have part-time teaching responsibilities and part-time coordinating responsibilities. I think maybe there's a way to look at that and see, do we need all of that? Is there some way that we can combine some of those positions and reduce that cost? I don't think we should ever be going to increasing class size and going for teachers and staff that are supporting are supporting our students, nor do I think we should be going to the place of threatening to fire all of the part-time staff or lay off part-time staff for services that the residents want. So I am not going to support this budget. I do think there are ways that we can be more thoughtful about what we're doing with budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrett?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Barrett, and I live at 1 Crestview Drive. I have been a resident of North Haven for about 30 years now. My husband, Sean, and I have raised our 3 children here. Sean and I both work in higher education. I'm one of the founding members of the Team for Education, and I am also an elected member of the Board of Finance. And members of the Board of Finance have a sworn duty to set aside personal priorities and affiliations to remain objective and serve the best interests of everyone in our town, in both the near term and in the future. In budget development, I can assure you that I do not show favoritism, nor do I pit one department against another. So I feel that it's my obligation to advocate for those people who cannot be here this evening and for whom this budget would be crippling. So I do not support this $137.6 million proposed budget because I believe that it will significantly increase tax bills in 25-26, the highest levels I've ever seen. If this budget is approved, it would mean tax increases for 3 years in a row. Many residents would not be able to afford the $1,000 to $2,000 tax increases that Mr. Frieda articulated. If this budget is rejected at referendum, and I think it will be, then the Board of Finance will have an opportunity to deliver what I believe will be a more responsible budget. I'd like to remind everyone that last year the budget was defeated and it was reduced and not a single job was lost. So Mr. Frieda presented kind of what I believe to be the 2 extremes. We all heard his presentation on the proposed budget, a record $9 million higher than the current year, and a tax rate of 29.46 mils necessary to fund that proposed budget. At last week's April Board of Selectmen meeting, and then again tonight, Mr. Frieda said that the mill rate would have to have been drastically lowered, probably to the 22 to 25 mils range, in order to avoid any tax increases next year. But this would result in devastating cuts to services. So folks, I can assure you that there are lots of choices between these 2 bookend extremes. On the one hand, a budget with a big increase, $9 million in spending, and a large tax increase versus a budget with few services and no tax increase. In between there's an ocean, and I think we can do better. So now I'd like to touch on just a few points about the budget development process, as well as a few points about the proposed budget. First, the process. On the town side, a year ago, the first version of the town budget presented by Mr. Frieda at the January 2024 Board of Selectmen Budget Workshop included all departmental requests. By contrast, this year, Mr. Frieda made cuts to the budget requests before the budget workshops even began. For example, removing the requested 4 additional firefighters. The First Selectman has also made a promise to the superintendent that the Board of Ed budget would not be further cut. So I have to ask, what exactly is the point of this supposed democratic 6-month-long budget development process if one person can be making unilateral decisions that impact thousands? On the Board of Ed side of the budget, you've heard a lot about the 3 different stages and the evolution of the Board of Ed budget. The truth is, that's just standard operating procedure. And I know that from studying at least 50 different towns and reading their Board of Education meeting minutes. So I'm very glad to hear that the North Haven Board of Ed followed the standard operating procedure this year. It didn't happen last year. But having 2 rounds in which the Board of Ed made education budget cuts to get it down to just a single-digit % increase is not unusual. It's very hard work, I can attest, but it is not unusual. What is unusual in our town is a 7% Board of Ed budget increase, rather than the standard somewhere between 2 and 5%. So now I'd like to make a couple of comments about the proposed budget. The town government budget, with a $4.5 million increase in spending and the addition of two new positions, represents a consistent pattern that I've seen. Larger dollar increases and larger % increases year after year over several years has resulted in the town budget creeping up to eventually increase, to eventually equal, as Mr. Frieda pointed out, the BOE budget. In terms of capital requests, the budget started with a total of $2.7 million in capital requests, and these requests were slashed by the Republican members of the Board of Finance, bringing them down from $2.7 million to $933,000. These reductions exclusively impact town services, especially public works, fire, police, and community services. In terms of the total town government budget, now that's the combination of town, capital, and contingency. For this proposed budget, it's $69.1 million. It's actually bigger than the BOE budget for the second year in a row. And that's saying a lot, given the 65% reduction in those capital requests. And a BOE budget increase of $4.5 million would be the largest in North Haven's history by far. The highest increase to date has been $2.7 million, and they're asking for 4.5. There's also no need for a BOE capital budget due to, as Mr. Frieda pointed out, the millions of dollars in town matching grants and bonded projects for school construction, enhanced security, and improved athletic facility upgrades. The Director of Finance Administration and Procurement, Mr. Monaco, has also assured that any BOE building emergencies would be covered by the town budget or general fund. So therefore, the BOE does not need a capital budget. So I encourage members of the audience to express your opinions on the proposed budget, and please help the Board of Finance. If you want to add something to the budget, please also indicate A, whether you'd be willing to pay even more taxes for your suggested addition, or B, whether if you want to add something, whether you'd like to have additional reductions to the budget in order to have no tax change. If you have suggestions for other areas of the budget that you think should be changed, please do so. Okay, thank you for your time.
And we have a response by Mr. Daney.
Nancy, thank you, and I'll use this microphone since I wasn't so successful last time. Just 1 or 2 quick things. Mr. Frieda runs this town. If I work at a corporation and I put my budget in and my boss says it's too high, Tim, you need to cut it back, then I cut it back, okay? The individual department heads work with the administration to put a budget together, and that's what we got. The chief wants 4 firefighters. He mentioned it, as was correctly stated in our workshop, okay? As I mentioned earlier, it's just another priority that we have to balance. We can have differences of opinions, and Nancy and I can have a difference of opinion on it, but what we got as a board was a request for no new firefighters because that's what came to us through the administration of the town. The other thing I want to mention is, yes, the budget got turned down last year. We made some cuts, and correctly stated, there was no cuts in payroll or services. But I'm going to tell you, we got lucky, okay? It's been correctly stated that the Board of Ed had a cut of $950,000. Fortunately for them, they were able to take it out of their medical reserves. But I want to tell people, what are those medical reserves for? You know what they're for? They're for two main reasons. People get sick, and it's hard to really judge what your claim is going to be year over year. As a general trend, for people who've been coming to this meeting a long time, medical costs go up. Every year Mike gets up here, and one of the biggest increases on both sides of the town budget are medical costs. People get sick, claims can rise, they can be very spiky, they're not uniform. The other thing I want to remind people is we are self-insured. The other reason we have reserves is because if we ever decide to go back to a traditional plan and say get Anthem to insure the town, we have to cover what they call the tail. The tail is that if we stopped having insurance being self-insured today, claims are still going to come into the town that we are going to be responsible for, because we all know it takes 3 to 6 months sometimes to get a claim in through your insurance company. The other thing, to get back to why we didn't have any cuts in service or personnel last year, is that on the town side, some cuts were made, but two other things happened. One, we discovered that there was a payment on a lease, which we thought was due, which was substantial, it was a 6-figure number, that was not due. And there was another piece of debt that we had that, because we had a little room in last year's, not budget, but the operating expense of the year, we were able to prepay an expense, so we were able to remove it from the following year. So we were able to do those things. But as I think you heard Mr. Frieda say, and don't trust me, trust the guy that does this every day. If the budget doesn't pass, there will be some pain. There's just really no way around it this year. I'll give you one final thought. The grand list in this town is roughly $4.4 billion. So, having been on this board a long time, when we're in a situation like this, like we were last year, where it's potential that the budget might not get passed, something you want to think about is this. So what's $1 million? It's $4.4 million. Half a mil is 2.2. My own sort of personal feeling is, if we have to adjust the budget either this year or any other year, there's no sense doing it for less than $500,000, because it's just not enough to, I think, frankly, have people vote for it. But $2.2 million, even though it's a big budget, is a lot of money. It's $1.1 million out of roughly each side of the town. And in a year like this, where the taxes are going to be higher for sure, even though the mill rate's going down, maybe $500,000 isn't even enough. So that's the flip side, and those are just a couple numbers to think about. And I guess I wanted to stress that I don't know that if this budget does not pass, that we're going to have the same success in cutting without too much pain as we did last year. Thank you.
Mr. Bathrick has a response.
My name is Ron Bathrick. I'm the chair of the Board of Education. And before I even get started, I'd just like to thank the Board of Education, the other members, for their diligent work in trying to narrow down a budget that's effective and still provides an educational outcome for all our students. I'd like to just mention a couple of things that Ms. Barrett said. At the last meeting, you were taunting the fact that we should be at 4% like our neighboring towns. Apparently now it drove down to 2%, and I would love to see which town that is, because there is no town at 2%. So to make up a number like that is reckless and dangerous. And it makes people think that we're not trying to do our job out here, and that's not the case at all. Secondly, when we gave up the monies last year at the second vote, and we did not lose any staffing, it was exactly as Tim said, it was because we gave up reserve. This year, that would not be the case. We've already given up our reserve. So whatever we maintained from last year to this year, we gave up to get to 6.99. And one more thing about 6.99. As much as I would love to have had Selectman Frieda say, hey, guess what, Ron, you're at 6.99 and no one's ever going to touch it. Those words were never said. That's another fallacy that came out of the mouth of Ms. Barrett. I'm telling you, what he told me was that the Board of Finance was going to move forward at 6.99, and it would be determined by the vote of the town whether that would pass or not. He never guaranteed me anything. We work together closely. We talk about options. We talk about what we're going to have to give up if we don't hit our original budget numbers. And that is the normal process of things. The other normal process of things is when we do look at numbers 3-4 times. She makes a comment like, oh, welcome to 2025. Guess what? We've been doing that since I've been here. We get numbers, we look at it again. Patrick looks at it, gives us a number, and then we do what we do. So as much as I appreciate you trying to make it sound like we don't do that, I'm here to correct that. That is not exactly anywhere near what we do. So again, I'd like to thank the board for all their work. I'd like to thank Patrick and Christian for their incredible input, and the Selectman's office also. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Heidi Avila, and I'm sorry I'm a little raspy today. I just want to echo the sentiment of the people that have spoken, Jenny, Nancy Barrett, in regards to the fact that I, too, will not vote for this budget, and I'll tell you why. I pay taxes in this town not only where I live, but where I work. I run my business from this town, and I found it necessary to pull my child out of the school system back when she was in 7th grade. So if my child is not getting any benefit from the school system, and the reason why is because I also had 2 other children that went through the school system. One is 32 and one is 23. And I found the education to be substandard. They were not educated to the level where they can be competitive in the market, in the workforce, or in post-secondary education. I had one child who really struggled in college, and he graduated from the school system. So having been very super disappointed in the school system, I will not even go on a tangent about how non-inclusive and non-diverse the school system was, and I've been here since 2006. My daughter is now in a private education. She's getting the type of schooling, the type of education, phenomenal. And now I know that she's going to excel when she goes to college. I know she's getting the skills that she needed. And so when I hear about a budget that's dumping so much money into a Board of Education that really is not working for all of your citizens, maybe you're working for a select few, but there are people in your community that are not seeing the benefit of those tax dollars, I feel like this budget really needs to be worked on, so that if you are dumping money in the Board of Ed, make it so that everyone that lives in this community, everyone that works in this community gets the benefit of it. And like Jenny was saying, perhaps you want to look at the salaries. Maybe you could bring the salaries down in the Board of Ed, in the town offices, so that you don't have to do anything that would severely impact your children, because I understand that the children do need to be educated. And so I am not suggesting that you cut where it's going to impact the kids, but maybe you could do some creative financing. Maybe some administrators need to not take a salary raise, and let's add what we need to make our community safe. Because not only do I have a 14-year-old that is not coming to school in this town since she was 12, I have an elderly parent who has dementia and who's 86 years old. And when I think of the fact that if someday I need to call 911 and I have to wait for those services to come and reach my father while I am paying taxes not only in my home, but in my business, and if there's not a 911 a firefighter that could come and help me, that's something that it's unfathomable. I can't even think about it. You know, when I came here, it was just to hear what you all had to say. But having heard it all, I'm sorry. There are very capable people here, very intelligent. You all need to go back and rework these numbers so that we get the firefighters that we need, and also educate our kids. All of our kids deserve to be educated, because not everyone can pick up and go into their pocket like I did and come up with $24,000 to privately educate my child. There are people here that can't do that. And so we need to do both. We need to do it. We need to give the firefighters and also educate the kids. Let's look at our salaries. Let's see what we can do. Thank you.
I would just like to comment myself. I am a tax-paying, home-owning, working in this town, educating 2 children in the system. My children receive a wonderful education, and I never think of my tax dollars as being dumped when it comes to the Board of Ed's budget. Thank you. Next person? Yes.
Hi, Dan O'Brien, 3 Belmont Road. I'm going to vote yes. I'm going to encourage people to turn out and vote, and hopefully turn out and vote yes. I think we've learned that it matters when people turn out. I don't know how many people are watching this or hearing this, but I think it's very important that we all remain civically engaged. I'm a teacher. I work in this building. I'm married to a social worker. Our child has had the blessing of living in this town, in the same house, her entire life. The value of that is known to me because I grew up in the military, and I didn't grow up with a sense of home. I'm very fortunate I have both my parents, but we bopped from place to place to place to place to place to place. There was never like a rooted place where I came from until my wife and I moved to North Haven 23 years ago. And it's still a little weird for me, but my daughter has, as soon as we returned her from St. Raphael's Hospital, has lived in the same house her whole life, and she went through the school system. And she's the most precious thing to me in my life, and she's a pretty good student. She's okay. She had an excellent education here, and it was triumphant watching her go through the entire experience. She's now a grown adult. She's off in college. We're paying college costs. My wife and I are in the third acts of our professional careers. And, I can understand the concerns about how you budget personally and in your household and so forth. But it is important that we budget for what really matters. And I just wanted to say that I'm going to vote yes because I believe in this community, and I want to make sure that it keeps being great, not only just because I'm here, but because lots of other people have their families and their communities and their neighborhoods and their loved ones here. And so I'm going to vote yes, and I hope a lot of people will vote. Thank you.
Raise your hand so I can see you. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hello, I'm Sue Benvenuti. I live at 250 Bassett Road, North Haven. I've been a resident here for 38 years. My son, that I raised alone because his father was ill and was dying before he was going into first grade, I knew I was going to have to take him out of North Haven, and I did put him into a private school. I didn't do it because of North Haven's school system. I did it because it didn't offer me what I needed at that time. His friends all grew up and went to North Haven Public Schools. They had a fantastic education. And I always have paid and gone with whatever the tax increase was here and gone with the school budgets just because I knew that the town had great school system. I understand everybody doesn't always get what they think they should be having. I didn't get it in a private school system for my son, but I fought for what I needed. As far as Tim saying that the Nelson, I think it is, Nelson, whatever it is, I see that ambulance by the volunteer fire department every single day. I didn't realize why they were there. I'm very glad to hear that, since I did hear about the non-fire unit response, and that scared the hell out of me because I took care of 2 very ill senior citizens who passed away. And I know what a response system from the fire department means. To know that that ambulance is there, that's what I will need. My only problem, and I'm going to be 100% honest, well, my taxes on that same home I've been in went up 51%. And I did fight it and appeal it twice, and I got it down to 45%. I am not thrilled, and I will see if there's anything I can do about that, because I still can't find the justification in that happening to my home on a drive-by assessment. And all the time I've been here, nobody's ever come into my house to assess it. They're more than welcome. My taxes never went down because the depreciation in the house, the roof, the siding, anything else, it never went down, and it was okay. But I don't understand why it would go up. My assessment went up $110,000, which blows my mind. That blows my mind. I love this town. It's been good to me, and I really hope to be able to stay here for my senior years. But I know the negativity that I'm hearing as far as you don't like something here, you know what? It's a good place. You know, I don't like the fact that because of COVID, all of our house prices skyrocketed. That man who was in real estate said 185 houses were sold. Okay, so 185 houses, that affected all of us like this? That doesn't make any sense to me. I think the company that's doing the assessments for our town should be checked out. How they do the assessment should be checked out. Yes, will I vote for the budget? Yes, I will. I had no problem doing the $50 increase a month in my taxes. This year I thought it was going to be $100. It looks more like it's going to be $200. I don't know what's going to happen here. But I'm going to do what I have to do because I do believe that Mike Frieda has put North Haven #1 in the book every chance he has gotten. And I do believe that the Board of Education puts this school system where it is. Because if not, why the hell is everybody trying to come here? Why is everybody trying to come to North Haven? It's because of what this town has built up.
Thank you, ma'am. Raise your hand so I can see if you'd like to comment. I'm not seeing anyone over here. Anyone up top? Anyone over here to my left? Because I think you want to speak again, Sally? I want to let someone go a second time. Oh, yes, Mr. Criscola.
My name is Peter Criscola. I live at 54 Fieldstone Court. I've been a resident of this wonderful town for approximately 40 years, and I was the former fire commissioner. And first and foremost, I'm voting for the budget. And I am a senior, and I have no children in school. But I am voting for the budget. We have a wonderful budget. And there's a couple of things I want to touch on. I'm not that familiar with the Board of Ed's budget, but I'm sure that some of the people in this audience that are against the Board of Board of Education budget, when they had children in school, especially 3, they didn't want a decrease in the budget. They wanted the budget to go just the way it was because they wanted the best for their children. Well, there's other children in town too, and we need the best for them. On a second note, someone passed a comment about our first selectman about a raise. Well, for the past 10 years, this town has been very successful in economical growth. We have no economic development officer. Every town, city, borough has one. If not, 90% do. Usually anywhere from $80,000 to $150,000 a year. So for 10 years, on an average, we owe Mike $120,000 a year. So let's not give him his raise and give him $1.2 million as a bonus for not doing that. 6 months, he ran the finance department because of our loss. No one compensated him for that. And again, I'm not blowing smoke in his ear. He's done a great job. Now to the fire department. No one loves the fire department more than me. No one. I've been involved 30 years. I started when we had 27 men, paid firefighters. And I fought diligently to get a 28. Not because it made more responses, because that's a fallacy, because I wanted equal firefighters per shift, so no one has to keep going back on overtime. Our chief does a great job. He's extremely smart. He's an excellent chief. He knows how to run a department and a budget. But in all fairness, if we put on one firefighter, if we put on two firefighters, it's not going to eliminate the 64 missed calls unless you are prepared to buy 2 new pieces of apparatus and give each firefighter 1 apiece, and they can go out by themselves and answer your calls. It's not going to happen. If we put on 9 firefighters and we take 1 off of the extra 11 and bring the work shift down to 10, then we could have another paid engine and have that run, and even probably make that a medical engine. And I'm sure the chief thought about that because he's a lot smarter than I am. Trust me. Or if you want to put on 1 firefighter and you want to run 2 of the shifts down to 10 and have a peak engine that just runs peak hours during the day and use that for a medical engine, or even if you want to put another rescue on to cover the calls. But that's the only way it's going to happen. And if you do that, you're going to run your shift down to 10 and you're going to incur overtime. So my suggestion, let it run the way it is. If we could find a way with a safer grant chief, if we could get 9 firefighters on board, and I know it's a tremendous bang to the budget. It's not $120,000 a man. By the time you're all done with a firefighter, outfitting him, his pension, his salary, his vacation time, sending him to school, sending him to the academy, and covering his shift, it's more like $180 a firefighter. But we do need them, and I'm a great advocate and proponent of the fire department. I want as many as we can for safety. And I think we're doing a great job. Vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Christy Kehoe, 17 Ball Road. I just wanted to share tonight my personal experience with the town. I have 2 children at North Haven Middle School. One is completely thriving. She's been through the system. She's had nothing but just amazing educators in front of her, and that's all she's needed to be successful. And I have another child who's needed to tap into many resources that have been available at both his elementary and middle school. And honestly, he would not be walking across the stage to get his 8th grade certificate this year if it wasn't for those services. So I take personal offense when I hear people in my community stand up here and in any way question the Board of Education budget that has already been decreased significantly and that would tap into those resources for kids like my son. Seeing the numbers, because when we talk about budget, it comes down to numbers, and in seeing where we are in our DIRG year after year and how we're just dropping every year. We're now 6 from the bottom. And producing students who are coming out of our state testing in the top. That speaks so highly to the amazing professionals we have in our education system. So I'm going to vote yes, because I think that our students in this town deserve a 6.99% increase, because year after year, we have been given 2 and 3%. And now we're at a critical, as Mr. Frieda pointed out. And I applaud Mr. Frieda for speaking up for our Board of Education, because I've watched how many times we've cut and cut and cut, and he realizes now, I think many people realize now, we're handcuffed. We have mandates we are responsible for. We have children like my son who require services be provided. And if we continue to cut, where are we going to get those services from? Where are those resources going to come from? So I applaud Krista, who stood up here as the union president, saying that we have to band together, because that's exactly what we have to do after hearing some comments tonight. We are a community. So to me, this is less about numbers. This is about people. And unfortunately, it sounds like we are going to be at that critical moment where people are going to lose their jobs. And that is directly going to impact students in this town. And as long as I'm an advocate in this town, I will use my voice to fight against that. Thank you.
Hi. Whoa, it's loud. No, I'm already loud. Eleni Diaco-Georgiou. I live on Upper State Street. I'm putting on my parent hat today. I just wanted to say I have 3 kids in the school system. I've been living here a very long time. I did not grow up here. We love North Haven. And I have children that span the gamut of the school system. So I have a high schooler, I have a middle schooler, and I have one who was skipping along going to his kindergarten assessment at Green Acres the other day because he's so excited to go to that school. So I just wanted to say that I've seen a lot of growth just from living here throughout, my kids starting in elementary and then kind of moving up through the school system. So the growth that has happened just from when we started to now is tremendous, and that speaks to the humbleness of a lot of our central office staff and to all of our teachers. The amount of early college experience classes we have, the amount of AP classes we have, the amount of support services we have, things that all of our kids need across from kindergarten all the way up through the high school is amazing. And I just want to say thank you to our teachers and to our central office staff for all their hard work and for that growth that we have seen. I know, people always talk about the websites and the grades of the schools and the scores and this, and they've gone up. They've gone up, and it's quantifiable information that our scores have gone up, and that's a testament to all the things that our teachers do and that our administrators do. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak for the very first time? Please raise your hand, or I'm going to start moving on and letting people speak again. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am, up top.
Hi, my name is Alex Johnson, 50 Fallon Drive. I just wanted to say that I am in support of this budget. I'm proudly wearing my 2012 senior shirt, definitely showing my age. And even though I did not, hi, Mr. O'Brien, have Mr. O'Brien as a teacher, little secret, I used to kind of eavesdrop on his class because he is a fabulous teacher, and all my friends had him. Losing even one staff member affects students. I remember the 2008 recession. I remember those Board of Ed meetings. I remember my mom going to budget meetings. And I remember being scared and all my friends being terrified as they were losing teachers that they saw every day. Even if your kid doesn't have a teacher, the teachers around them still affect them. It's been 15 years. I still remember Mr. O'Brien's name. That is pretty impressive, not because he said it today. These people have a great impact on the character of your kids. They matter. And frankly, even if we, for the sake of a budget, lose one teacher to say we're saving money, we still have to pay unemployment anyways. So what you're saving $1, but you still not really, because you're going to end up having to pay 75 cents anyways? What's the point? What's the point? I get that stuff is hard. I'm also a caretaker. The fact I'm not in scrubs for once this week is actually a miracle. Mike Nappy can attest to that. Actually, one of my patients is a resident of North Haven, and I love him dearly, and I see how hard it is on a short income. But also I can tell you that before I became a caretaker, the only education that I had that I used towards that was mainly from this high school and from Mrs. Hart's science class of anatomy, because I didn't go to college to be a caretaker. A lot of caretakers that are going to eventually take care of the seniors or the older residents here in the next 10 years are coming either 2 years out of high school, and that is their education. How we educate kids here in North Haven is going to affect your quality of life. These are the people that will more likely take care of you when you need help. It matters how we educate them. And then to my second point, I am pleading with the Board of Finance to put firefighters back in the budget. My best guy friend is a firefighter now for 6 years in Memphis. He is also just qualified to be a paramedic. And when I called him and I told him what our staff numbers were going to be, while I'm busy with my knees and all over, he just stopped dead and was like, somebody's gonna die. It's not a when, it's not a how, someone is going to die. That is the end statement of what he said. We cannot play with people's lives to save pennies. Also, again, we have an aging population. Nelson Ambulance does not just cover only North Haven. They also sometimes have to come all the way from New Haven. How long have you had to drive in 3 p.m. traffic from downtown New Haven to get back here? Usually, on a good time, it's like 15, 20 minutes. But if you're stuck in traffic on the highway, and I'm sorry, but a lot of people don't pull over for ambulances anymore, you can be there for 45 minutes. Those are critical minutes in a stroke. They are critical minutes when it comes to a heart attack. And it's a lawsuit waiting to happen that we are going to pay on the back end if we do not invest in our fire department. These people are bending over backward for us. And even that, they're still giving back to the community in their own free time. Chief Haggerty gave me a giant light at like 6 in the morning on his way to shift just to make sure I could take care of, I do a carnival for Halloween for the kids. Not only is he pulling extra time, extra hours to make sure we stay safe here, he's also giving to the community. Let's give back to them. They do so much for us. Let's protect ourselves. Let's protect our students. I know money is tight, so for those who have extra dimes and dollars, please donate to your food banks. Check on your elderly neighbors. Ask if they need help with the leaves. You have a couple hours a day. Help a neighbor so that they can pay the taxes that we need to take care of our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Michelle Guglielmo, Curtis Court. Okay, this is going to be a little scattered because I wasn't really sure if I was going to come up or not. I am on the Board of Ed, but I speak here tonight as a resident, as a tax-paying resident, as a mom to 2 kids in North Haven school system. I moved here in 2011 for the schools and for the town services because I knew that I wanted to raise a family other than where I was. And when we were looking for places, we looked specifically for places that had wonderful reputations for schools. That was obviously our biggest draw to coming here. I wanted to raise my family in a safe community that values education. I value all of our town services, not just speaking about education tonight, but there's many places that are paying more money and getting less services than we are. So I appreciate all of that. I want to speak to a couple things that I heard tonight. I want to speak up for the raises for our admin and for our first selectmen, because first off, you can't just take people's raises away. That's not how it works, okay? Many people are part of a union that were negotiated, and these are contractual obligations that we have. Also, they earn every single cent. Our principals, all of them are the heartbeats of our schools. They're the heartbeats of every school. And unless you're there and working in a school, I don't think people really have a concept of what goes on day to day and how much time and effort that they put in. Their job does not end at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. It's 24/7. So I can speak to that. I speak to that also as a teacher in a nearby district who at one time who had aspirations to be a principal at some point, and I made the decision that I actually don't want to do that because of what I saw them go through during COVID. So I just appreciate everything that they do. Let's see. I want to speak very quickly about, I know we've heard a lot about money. I'm sorry, I'm so scattered. I know it's very late and everyone's very tired too. So I know we heard Mr. Frieda talk a lot about average increases. My increase, I'm looking at $997 for the year. And I know that it's a lot of money. I know that people are struggling, okay? I'm a 2-teacher household. We live a modest lifestyle. We drive cars that are the year, my car was not up on that list. I drive we have a 2006 and we have a 2016. So our cars are much older than most of the cars that were on that list. I have a child who's in elementary school and one who's in junior year, and we're looking at colleges. So I know that I have increased expenses that are coming for one very soon, and by the time that one finishes, I will have another one right there ready to go. So my increase of $997 will equate to $83 per month. So for me, $83 per month, and I know that it's a struggle. I know that everybody's struggling. Costs have gone up all over the place. I'm willing to try to find a way to find that $83 so that I can maintain all of the services that I have in this town. I want to speak really quickly. We heard it a couple times tonight about our budget being $9 million in extra spending. We are not going on a spending spree here. We are not out and buying a whole bunch of things that we don't currently have. This $9 million is an increase in what everything is costing. So we are maintaining our services that we have. It's not like we're out there just buying a whole bunch of extra stuff. We are trying to cover the increases that all of us are facing in our own households as well. Everything has gone up. So I don't know why anyone thinks that this would not also affect all of our town services or everything in our schools. I don't know what else I have. I'm sorry. Oh, and I heard a couple times tonight say that asking for a 6.99% increase is not standard. And I just wanted to point out that I'm not sure that we're living in standard times anymore. So, it's also not standard that most Board of Eds only get allocated 50% of the town's budget. Most Board of Eds are actually, in our DIRG, are closer to 60%. So I just wanted to say that I'm very proud of our teachers and our administrators for continuing to do more with less, because they do have less than what most other towns in our DIRG are doing. We've already seen that we spend less per pupil, and our results are amazing. So I want to be able to maintain that. There's going to be a breaking point at some point, and I don't want to keep lowering the floor to find out where that breaking point is. I want to stay where we are, and that's the reason why I'll be voting yes for this budget.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak for the first time? Please raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to go with anyone who'd like to speak again. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. I was glad to see the OPEB line is funded this year. That's on page 36 of your budget book under insurance. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, and last year it was funded at 0, and I was quite concerned. The chairman of the Board of Finance might recall last March, I asked him about it. I voiced my concern about that being at 0. Because of GASB 45. GASB is the Government Accounting Standards Board, which was formed in 1986 to regulate how states and local governments must handle their financial affairs, and GASB 45 regulates the other post-employment benefits line. So last March, Mr. Doheny said he didn't know about GASB 45, even though he said he was the one who put it down to 0, that line. I asked Mr. Frieda, who is definitely aware of GASB 45 regulations, if he was concerned about the 0 funding last year, And he said no, he wasn't concerned. But several months ago, Mr. Frieda reported that the town lost its cherished AAA rating. And one of the three reasons given by the rating agency for that reduction was the OPEB funding. So I'm glad it is funded this year. I also want to say Mr. Frieda is an elected official. He's not in a union. So that was said that he was in a union. He's not in a union. I disagree with Mr. Bathrick on one thing. I did hear Mr. Frieda say before the Board of Ed workshop, and I could remember sitting in the audience, so it couldn't have been at a Board of Selectmen meeting, because then he'd be sitting next to me. So I'm sure it was at a Board of Finance meeting that there would be no cuts to the Board of Ed budget, and that was before the workshop. But what bothered me more, and I talked about this at the February Board of Finance public comment, was that at the State of the Town address in February, well before all of the workshops were completed, Mr. Frieda said what the mill rate was going to be. It was going to be between a reduction between 5 and 6 mills, and it is a reduction of 5.18. And that bothered me, and I said that at the Board of Finance meeting because it just seemed to undermine the whole purpose of our workshop system, which is built into our town charter, that I think is an essential part of the budgeting process. And to say that one big department that's half the budget isn't going to be touched, and then to say what the mill rate's going to be before I think 4 or 5 other workshops still hadn't even gone before the Board of Finance, it just soured the process this year for me. And I just wish that we would stick to the workshop process spelled out in our charter. We've heard a lot tonight about education. I've lived here for 68 years, my entire life, and vocal education advocates have always been have a long history, I think, of participating in the budget process, especially the past few years. But I've been attending these public hearings since the 1980s, and especially the last 12 years as a member of the Board of Selectmen. And I can tell you, there were quite a few of those years when I would stand here and there was nobody here. I mean, it was just empty, as I said earlier. And during those years, the Frieda administration made significant cuts to education. Now, we had somebody before give a history lesson, and she talked about Board of Ed cuts only in the 3 years when the budget was defeated, and that was 2010, 2015, and 2024. There were many other years where the Frieda administration cut the Board of Ed budget. For example, in 2016, it was cut by $840,000. And at the March 21st, 2018 Board of Finance meeting, it was cut by $1.1 million. And in those years, the budget passed. There was no need to reduce it because the budget's passed. So last year, the Frieda administration did not cut any money from the Board of Ed request. And the budget was defeated at referendum, as we know, and resulted in a $950,000 cut. The taxpayers have made that cut happen by defeating the budget. Mr. Frieda was in the clear. And I see the same thing happening this year. There was really no discussion at the March Board of Finance meeting. Those decrements were there, and they were going to be there, and that was it. Mrs. Barrett and I do not always agree, but I will say this. She was the one Board of Finance member who at least tried to engage in a discussion at that meeting to try to find another solution. Other Republican members of the Board of Finance said hardly anything except, I support the budget. I support the Republican decrements. That's all I heard. it's a politically, to not cut education is a safe thing to do because whatever happens at the referendum happens. So my question is now to Mike Frieda. If last year a budget that raised taxes for the average homeowner by $630 was defeated, do you think this budget that raises taxes by twice that amount will pass? I want to know if you think this budget will pass.
We don't know.
Okay. All right. Right. Well, I just wondered, based on the amount of the increase last year, and it was defeated, and this amount, I just wondered. I accept that as an answer. Like I said earlier, my crystal ball is in the shop. I can't predict it either. But
So let me tell you why I don't
okay.
know. Because we don't know what the turnout's going to be. We don't know. We heard tonight some conflicting points of view about what people want, what people don't want. So this is the process. The process is we go to a referendum. So I can go on and on here tonight, but I'm not going to, because some of the things said here tonight were not accurate. And as somebody said earlier, there's one guy that's doing this every single day, and that's me. So we have a process here. We work across the party lines. We work to create positive outcomes. We had someone say they wanted to cut $1.5 million out of the Board of Education at one of the last finance meetings. So let's explain everything if we're going to start getting into detail here about some of these smaller issues. Process is very important. But this is not a council form of government, ladies and gentlemen. It's a town meeting form of government. It was said earlier that 1 year that we allowed the department heads to come forward and we presented everything to the Board of Finance. But we have the opportunity, because of the way this government is structured, the first selectman is the chief executive officer of the town. Whether it's me or whether it was somebody in the past or whether it's somebody in the future, we have the right in a reval year to internally cut back some of the requests before it goes to the Board of Finance. That's the way it works here. For 3 or 4 years, we did it the other way. We allowed everything to go to the Board of Finance, and very little of it stayed on the request. There were always cutbacks. This year, because of the reval, that's why we did it differently. We cut back some of the requests because I know that the more we add to this budget, it's going to fail. I mentioned that earlier. Right now, it could be 50-50. We don't know.
Okay. Right. That's at least in my 12 years of going to the Board of Selectmen workshops, more times than not, you did make cuts before we sent our budget to the Board of Finance. So I agree with you 100% on that. And a couple of years recently, you did put everything in. So that is absolutely true. Again, I just think that it's very simple. If you heard the superintendent's explanations for his budget request. You heard Mr. Frieda's explanations. If you could afford this tax increase and you think the expense requests are reasonable, then vote yes. If you don't think they're reasonable, then vote no. And that's how our beloved process works. But just please come out and vote. I really hope we have a big turnout in honor of the passing of Ann Rocco. Thank you very much.
Anyone else like to speak or ask questions, comment, educate the town meeting? Because that's what we're here for, to get us all educated so that when we go out to vote, we know what we're voting for. Anyone else like to speak? Going once, going twice. Then I will, yes ma'am.
I have a question for the superintendent. Patrick, if you wouldn't mind stepping up. Oh, okay. If you wouldn't mind explaining to the folks in the audience exactly how the per pupil expenditure is actually calculated?
It's calculated by the state of Connecticut. They take the full account of expenditures by the board and divide it by the student. So we get a number from the state.
But it's a net amount of money, and then it's divided by the number of students enrolled in that same year or in the previous year?
It's the previous year.
It's the previous year. So those are 2 different years of funding and enrollment, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the most update we have.
Right. So again, you don't make the rules. I totally understand that. You don't actually calculate the number, but I just wanted to make sure that people don't mistakenly think that, oh, per pupil expenditure, that's just the Board of Ed budget divided by the enrollment in that year. It's not, correct? Right. So it's somewhat of a misnomer, and to me, it's actually a completely artificial figure because it does come from 2 different years. Yes, it is the same process that is used for each and every town. However, some towns might have a big bump in their Board of Education funding in a given year. They might also have a big bump in their enrollment, and that could actually skew these numbers.
And go the other way as well.
It could go in either direction, absolutely. So, but I just want people to really understand the per pupil expenditure, while it is important for calculating some other things like excess cost grants and things like that, as far as a standalone statistic, it is not really all that useful. Would you agree?
No.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, well, if you actually look at the denominator that is used on the State of Connecticut website, I don't know where those enrollment numbers come from. Obviously, it comes from your office, but it doesn't seem to jibe with the enrollment numbers that I see in the CAFRA report each year or the numbers that you
I
report.
believe they take the October 1st numbers every year. That's our big roll-up to the state.
Mhm.
So that's when they take it.
Right, and then it can vary quite a bit throughout the year. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, to address some of the points that Mr. Chairman Bathrick made, I would just like to point out that during the first 10 years that Mike Frieda was in office, and again, I had children in the school system during that time, the Board of Education approved budget increase varied between 1% and 3%, and there were several years in which it was 1%. And it really wasn't until, let's see, 2021 in which the largest increase so far took place, and that was 5%. And again, since then, it's been 2%, 2.9%, 2.5%. This current year was 3.9%. But there have been no years of 6.99%. And if you look in the same year at the other towns in our DRG, you will see, and I'm happy to share this information with Mr. Bathrick, I'm sure he actually has it, and if you were to rank them from the lowest to the highest, the lowest in our DRG is Wallingford at 3.86, and the highest, I believe, is Watertown at 7.99. But there are really only 3 towns that are above North Haven's request, and I think that those towns will actually, those statistics will actually come down by the time it comes to a referendum. So, and if you look at many of the towns outside of our DRG, but just happen to be surrounding towns, he said that there's no one that has a 2%. I disagree. Manchester, 2.07, Madison, 2.46, Stratford, 2.66, Hamden, 3.3, and it goes on. And most of them, if not all of the, I think I have at least 15 towns here, are below 7%. So those are just some general statistics. But I did want to share with folks some information about the most recent March Board of Finance meeting. So at that meeting, I suggested, as a minority Democrat on the town, on board, I suggested a total of $2.8 million in budget reductions, while my Republican counterparts supported a list of declinations that totaled $2.4 million in reductions. There were some similarities between our lists and some very important distinctions. The Republican members of the Board of Finance cut the police request for 2 more patrolmen to just 1 police officer added in January. I thought that Chief Glenn made a very good argument, and I kept in the budget his request for 2, but I was outvoted. The Republicans also made cuts to the fire, police, and community services capital requests that I did not. The Republicans also made very deep cuts to public works capital requests, eliminating 80% of the public works capital funding, leaving only 2 items, as Mr. Frieda pointed out. I didn't do this because I consider public works services to be a form of public safety. I proposed that the BOE budget increase request of $4.5 million should be reduced by $1.49 million. And please note that even with that cut, the Board of Ed still would have been provided with an historic $3 million increase, which is larger than they've ever received to date. And here's why I made this suggestion. In February of 2024, the BOE budget request presented at the Board of Finance budget workshop was for $66.2 million. A few weeks later, the superintendent revised the budget to $64.9, reducing it by $1.2 million based upon 1 major omission and several calculation errors. And this was approved by the Board of Ed in a vote at their April 2nd, 2024 Board of Ed meeting. Following the budget defeat at the May 2024 referendum, the Republican members of the Board of Finance suggested reducing the Board of Education budget by another $1.2 million. I was the only Board of Finance member who raised my hand and said, no, that is not acceptable. And I found a way through reducing town budget expenditures and increasing revenue forecasts to reduce the Board of Ed budget request by just $950,000, saving the Board of Ed $250,000 and also saving town part-time positions in the library and community services. So despite all the fear-mongering, no one lost their job after the budget was defeated and after the cuts were made. Also, let me clarify that $950,000 reduction wasn't really a BOE cut. It simply shifted the funding source from the backs of the taxpayers to the very ample BOE Medical and Dental Reserve Fund, which at the time was in excess of $3 million. I am not aware to date that any money has been withdrawn from this special fund to pay for BOE operating expenses this year. Definitely for medical and dental claims, but I'm not aware of any withdrawals to pay for operating expenses. So I guess that originally budgeted $950 in funding wasn't actually needed. So to summarize, during the last budget development process, the original $66.2 million BOE budget request was reduced by a total of $2.1 million, with the assurance from Mr. Stirk that it would have no impact on students, teachers, administrators, academic materials, or extracurricular opportunities. So folks, what does that tell you? When a budget request can be reduced by millions of dollars and the requested increase almost cut in half with no negative consequences, you have to question what is the validity of this term non-discretionary funds, especially when the cuts also had no impact on the discretionary funds portion of the BOE budget. So my suggestion of a $1.49 million reduction to the 25-26 BOE budget request is much less than the $2.1 million reduction made last year. At the March Board of Finance meeting, I thought it was an appropriate starting point. My logic was make a cut to the Board of Ed budget now or face an even deeper cut later if the referendum is defeated. There was no meaningful discussion among the Board of Finance about my suggestion, nor were there any counter-suggestions offered. So here's the paradox. Why would we assume that that there would be significant wiggle room from the bare bones $4.5 million BOE budget increase made at the Board of Finance workshop last year, but no room to cut the almost identical increase requested by the Board of Ed this year? Here's another question. If the town and Board of Ed budgets each make up 50% of the total budget, why were the Republican cuts limited to just the town half? The assumptions made by many education supporters today is that any amount of money cut from the Board of Ed request for an additional $4.5 million, whether that cut is $1 or $1 million, will automatically result in layoffs. And I have not seen any evidence to support that particular claim. I don't know what the tipping point is. I don't know whether it's $500,000 or $1 million or $2.1 million like last year. I don't. The BOE request for an additional $4.5 million represents 65% more increased funding than the largest dollar increase the Board of Ed has ever received before, which, as I mentioned, is $2.7 million. So I say all of this because there are two major parts to the budget. Technically, there's 4 parts. But there's been a lot discussed about Board of Ed tonight. I think we also have to be focused on the town side of the budget, but with some sense of equity. The Board of Finance members made a little bit of cuts to the town side, enormous cuts to capital, which of course really affect the town side, and no cuts to the Board of Education. I believe that the well-being of residents living on fixed incomes or living paycheck to paycheck is dependent upon the decisions made during this budget development process. I take this responsibility very seriously, and I am not afraid to advocate for their best interests, as well as find ways to creatively and sufficiently fund education and public safety. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, actually, one second. Mr. Bathrick wants to respond.
No, I'm not going through it all. I'd like to thank Ms. Barrett for the history lesson on the last 10 years of the Board of Education budget, which have nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with this year's budget. The fact that she can tell you here that she sees no way that anybody will get laid off or no way this will get, but she doesn't know what the breaking point is. I find that curious also. I believe you'd have to know what the breaking point is to make that determination. Again, the funding that was taken out last year was from our reserve. We spoke to our actuators before we took out the reserve. We would have loved to keep that reserve for our insurance. We are self-insured. This year we took whatever balances we had and taken them out already as a preemptive move because we knew we would have to. And we knew that the monies that we were looking at would need to be explained by not having these large reserves anymore. They were a wonderful thing to have, and it put us in a good position. God forbid something happened. So, we're rolling the dice, and we're moving forward with that. But to compare other schools that are not in our DIRG at 2% and 4% budget, I believe that some of those schools bifurcate their budget into what they need to operate the Board of Education and then what they need for construction projects or projects that they need to complete for safety. That's a separate number. Ours is combined. So our number is one number. We don't look for anything else. So we can sit here and listen to other towns and what their numbers are and what we're saying the numbers are. It may not actually be in total. So just keep that in mind as you're listening to both sides of the argument. I appreciate Ms. Barrett coming up here and speaking her mind. I really do. I don't have any problem with that. And I don't have any problem, coming back and trying to answer against what she said. She's going to have an opinion, and I'm going to have an opinion. What I'm really worried about is the public's opinion, and what we need to do is to understand that we are where we are because we worked hard to get there, and not because we just threw a number together and, had promises made by Board of Finance members or selectmen. I mean, that's the largest conspiracy theory I've ever seen, and I just don't understand it. We work autonomously, and then we present. That's the way it goes. And now it's up to the people to decide if that works for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bathrick. One moment, let's make, anybody else? Okay, because I'm going to have Mr. Criscola, he wants to speak again.
I'm going to be very short. Again, my name is Peter Criscola, 54 Fieldstone Court, and I did leave out one thing. I don't know if it's up. Is that
What's
okay?
wrong? Is it working?
I don't know if I left out one thing before. I am the former Democratic town chair. And Mr. Frieda, Mike, my friend, he doesn't need me to defend him or cover for him. When I hear remarks, I know it's an election year and people want to make sure that they're seen and they're heard, okay? But all I hear now is partisan, not bipartisan. The Republicans this, the Republicans that. Mike came to the meeting. He already prefigured what the amount was going to be, the deduction, the rate, the percentage. Maybe because this is a business. The town is run like a business, and you should know that. It's run like a business. And you have a CEO that could see what's going to happen down the road. That's why he's the CEO. Okay? That's why. He knows what's going to happen because he studied it. He didn't just walk in a room and call up your store and get the crystal ball back after it was repaired. He didn't do that. He already knew what he was doing. Okay? He knew what he was doing. So he knew approximately where the budget was going to fall by running the numbers, because that's what he does. That's why he's there. That's why he runs the company. And I know he doesn't get a salary that's predicated by a union. We all know that. That was just a slip of the tongue when that young lady said that they're unions. We all know that. No one had to be reminded. But this is why it happens. It sounds like this is a Republican-Democrat thing. It's not. It's a town matter. Please don't make it Republican versus Democrat or vice versa. Don't do that. Okay? And by the way, in all this conversation, we haven't heard where you're voting, for the budget or against. Again, I'm voting with the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? On this side of the aisle? In the middle, anyone like to speak? And anyone else? All right, going once, going twice. So, this public hearing is now officially over. Please remember the very important dates, our budget meeting and the referenda, and be very proud that you guys stayed here until 10:30 at night on this very important issue. Thank you and have a good night. Have a good night.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.